Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our regular board meeting. Now I'd like to call our meeting to order. And the first thing on our agenda is that we will have a moment of silence. So if you will please join us. Thank you. Now, if you will join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a large group with us this evening. I would like to remind everyone, if you wouldn't mind, please making sure that your cell phones are on vibrate or turned off. We greatly appreciate that, and the board, please check your own, just to make sure. We will now move into staff questions, board. Commissioner Phillips.
Can we have somebody from planning come talk about this apartment situation on Highway 73, please?
Mr. Semino.
So I was asked to just give some history and background as to this apartment, Sanford Apartments that is proposed on NC 73.
I'm sorry, could you speak more into the microphone? I can't hardly hear you over here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I was asked to give a background of the apartment complex that's proposed on NC 73 that is just to the west of Old Statesville Road next to the power station, North Cross Downs and Hampton Subdivision. So if you go to the town's website, you'll see this map. This is blown up, and you'll see that gray shaded area. And what that is that's a project, and you'll see it has that gray matches up with an administrative approval. So it's called the Sanford Road Multifamily Project. It's residential. It's administrative process, meaning it just gets approved by staff. So it's a staff review. And the application was submitted in March of 2022. So where this all started actually was back in 1995 when the town of Huntersville had a long-range plan called the Huntersville Community Plan. It set the vision for the town in 1995. That vision was to downtown have mixed-use, walkable downtown. Areas outside the core is to reserve and preserve the rural and pastoral views. Buildings all front of street or open space, streets need to connect, sidewalks on both sides of the street, among many, many different things. So that was the vision that was set back in 1995. To reach that vision, we have tools of zoning and subdivision regulation. So in 1996, the town modified the zoning ordinances and the subdivision ordinances to change these recommendations from the community plan and put them and codify them and make them requirements. And what you're going to see here is a map. This, as you'll see, it says proposed zoning map. So this was from 1996. And I have a little red circle over that area in question. And that is proposed to be a neighborhood residential district. That actually, all the property got rezoned in the entire town. There were all new zoning districts established. The neighborhood residential district from 1996, this is the code of the intent, which is the first paragraph, talks about what's the intent of it, and it's to allow infill in the community. But you go to permitted uses, and it says uses permitted by right. What that means then is somebody walks in the door and ask for one of these uses, as long as it meets the zoning requirements, we would issue the permit. So bed and breakfast inns, boarding and rooming houses up to 4 roomers, congregate housing, multifamily homes, and single-family homes. So all these are permitted in that zoning district. And then if you look to the right, there's the permitted building types: apartments, attached house, civic building, detached house, mixed uses are also allowed. So again, if someone comes in and wants to develop that property and complies with the zoning rules, the lighting, the tree save, the storm drainage, then we would issue the permit. You'll notice underneath there's uses permitted with conditions. So these are things that we also, staff would approve, but we would, that there are some specific standards in them, such as cemeteries, churches, commercial uses in a mixed-use building, government buildings, parks, schools. All these things could be allowed in there as long as they meet those standards that are mentioned in the sections in parentheses right next to the use. So having said that, so that was the 1995 plan that set that vision. And then every 7 to 9 years, we update the plan saying, where are we at? Try to find out if there's changes that are being recommended. We did the next update in 2003, kept things the same, basically. 2011, we did an update, and that, again, in the core area of downtown, or the town between 77 and 115, we kept the same development pattern. And then the latest one we did was December of 2020. This is the current plan, and you'll see that, again, there's the red circle over the area in question, and that's the town core, which again allows a mixture of housing types. So I say that to mention that this is how we got to where we got to. This is the current zoning map that we have. The property in question is zoned neighborhood residential, so it's still the same as what it was in '96. And so, again, if you go to our website, you will see this information, and then from that website, you could pull down all kinds of details, the application, the site plan. And so that is an explanation as to how we got to where we got to, and I'm happy to answer any other questions the board has.
Commissioner Phillips, do you have any other questions?
Is there anything to be done that would stop this, legally, or would we, it is what it is at this point?
So it is what it is. I will say the state statutes kind of come into play. The state statutes say it's up to local governments to come up with their long-range plans and their zoning and subdivision rules. But the statutes do say once somebody turns an application in, then they have a legal right to build that. So even if we change the rules today, they have, by statute, a legal right to process that. Having said that, we are doing our review. It's still in progress. So they have to meet all the standards, and they're not meeting all the standards at this point in time. So if they don't meet the standards, then we can't issue the permit. If they do meet the standards, we would have to issue the permit.
Any other questions for Mr. Seminoke? Commissioner Boone?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Seminoke, for your presentation. I've got two questions. The wording of the 1995 definition you gave, is the word core been there since the beginning?
No, that's from the 2020 plan, town core. We now call that the town core. So that language.
2020 definition and moving it back to 1995. And that's where I'm going to have some issue with this, because we're going to have a case like this tonight with that word core in it also.
Okay.
And I think that it's kind of misleading to me, is outside the core is something that really wasn't said in 1995.
Okay, so here's what I would say. I can get you the 1995 plan in its entirety to show you what it said, okay? But what is key information is that based on that plan, this is the 1996 zoning map that the town came up with to comply with the recommendations from the 1995 plan. So you can see here that property in question was zoned neighborhood residential, proposed and ultimately adopted in 1996, and has stayed that way up till today.
And can you share with us what some of the issues are with approving this?
Yeah, so there's some easements, sewer easements that need to be dealt with. There is buffers that have to be complied with, and the NCDOT, that's NC 73 is a DOT road, state DOT road. Any driveway connections to that project has to be approved by NCDOT, and that has not been approved yet. So those are just among the things that I could think of off the top of my head that have to be addressed. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Commissioner Kovacs?
In this particular project, is there a willingness to, I guess, hear from residents by the applicant to make some adjustments to be more palatable, or do they know that there's?
Yes, they know. We hope so. It would be wonderful if that happens. There is a meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock here. The project developer for that apartment complex has been invited, and they are going to attend. So that would be wonderful if that could be done, yes.
And so we can, okay, so things can still be changed to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in fact, changes to the plan have to be done to comply with some of our rules anyways.
So, Mr. Semino, did you just say that there is a neighborhood meeting here at Town Hall tomorrow evening regarding this project with the developer?
The developer, residents, I'm sure the HOA has been involved. They've been in contact with members of our staff who set it up. We reserved this room. And so that is tomorrow night at 6 o'clock here.
6 p.m. here tomorrow night. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Semino? Seeing none, are there any other questions for staff this evening? Commissioner Kovacs?
Is MJ here?
Michael J. Cox? He is?
Sorry, catching off guard. Do you have an update? I know we haven't met for a long time, but in that time frame when we didn't meet, there was an incident across the street with a child leaving the facility. Do you have an update on any safety measures that have been put in place or what's happening with that?
So DPK has put a staff member, when they're closed, basically the incident happened when the museum was closed, but the camp was going on. And the child got out of the lobby area, so DPK now is going to station somebody in the lobby at all times during the days when the facility is closed for the general public. They're also changing the way they check students in and how they do their classes and how they organize their classes in the daytime when people are dropped off as well as pick up. They're also hiring an outside company to do a safety audit of all their facilities to see where they might be lacking, safety, or there might be loopholes in something of the procedures and so forth. I sent the email. There's a couple of bullet points on there that provided this afternoon. I'm trying to think what else I'm missing. Yeah, color coded, where you come in, you get a certain name tag, a certain color code, and you go directly to your teacher instead of everybody going to the one place and mixing the groups together. When you come in, you go directly to your teacher for your class.
Thank you. I just know it was quite the situation, a very scary situation. Thankfully, there's a mom out there that was able to help out the child, and our fire department and police department and everyone, they were very responsive and helpful. I just want to make sure, because I know there was concerns from the parent about the safety, so I wanted to know about an update. Thank you.
As I hear more from DPK, I'll definitely share that with everybody.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Boone?
Michael, give me a second. Don't leave. We had a canned food drive in Huntersville over the weekend, Old Huntersville Historic Society and Huntersville Rotary Club. We probably had 8 cars come up behind the American Legion North parking lot, wanting to know where the farmer's market was at. I'm just passing that along to you.
Okay.
Work on some
More signage. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for staff this evening? Seeing none, we will move into public comments. We do not have any presentations this evening. First up is Miss Janelle Harris. Ms. Harris, as you come up to the podium, you have 3 minutes to speak. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, and make sure you speak into the microphone. And welcome.
I'm Janelle Harris. I'm at 14111 Holbrooks Road. And my first announcement that I would like to make is the David B. Waymer will be having their first annual back-to-school drive. And we are looking for partnerships and definitely everybody in Huntersville to come out and support the Pottstown neighborhood. One more announcement that I'd like to make is that as a member of the now paused Downtown Plan Steering Committee, there are signs that are going into Pottstown that I wanted to know if they had anything to do with the committee, because they look just like the signs that we have. And they're not town signs that say revitalize downtown. So they're not from the organization that is looking like Huntersville regular productions. So, and the last comment that I had to make is, I'm sorry, I left my paper here, that I was happy to hear of the Mecklenburg County moving into our neighborhood. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Rick Ranson. Mr. Ranson, it's good to see you this evening. As you come up,
I'm nearly acrimonious.
as you come up, you have 3 minutes. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record for us.
Rick Ranson, I live at 214 Greenway Drive, and it's about the speed humps on Greenway. Been needed a long time. 15 years ago, went around, petitioned, unanimous, everybody wants them. The location's a little weird, though. They too close to 115 and not close enough to the park. The cars coming, if you're coming off of Mount Holly Huntersville Road, you're going all downhill and it's too fast. And the speed humps are going up the hill, and so they're going by the park much too fast. And that's where the most concern is for the safety. And the other concern is the vehicles that are manual transmissions, like the fire truck that goes up through there, the delivery vehicles. Whereas my understanding the location is nearest the park, it's actually going up the hill instead of being at the bottom of the hill, which is what other speed bumps in the neighborhood are. On Dallas Street, there's 2 of them. They're all at the bottom of the hill. And this one's not. It's going up the hill, and it's just a weird location. And I was talking with some of the neighbors where Crafty Beer guys, you come in from that way, they seem to think that it's too close to 115, that it really won't slow people down on the street. And so those are just my 2 concerns.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Tamia Williams. Miss William, or Tamia Williams, if you wouldn't mind joining us up here. As you come, I will tell you you have 3 minutes, and if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. And Amy Holloman also granted me her 3 minutes.
Just a moment. I do not have where Ms. Holman has signed up to speak. Did you sign up? I did. I don't have a sheet.
Well, I might be able to make it within the 3 minutes, so it's okay. All right. For the record, I am Tamia Williams regarding the address of 13232 and 13228 Central Avenue. Greetings, commissioners. I am a 4th-generation Pottstown community member. My mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother have all resided there and attended, my grandmother and mother attended Torrance Lytle. My mother was 1st-generation graduating class desegregated from North Mecklenburg High School. I'd like to give a bit of background on Pottstown and the importance and rich legacy that it has in the town of Huntersville. My great-grandparents, Alexander Henderson and wife, Frankie May, were leaders in the community who worked with their neighbors to achieve some of the basic human necessities needed for a decent quality of life. My great-grandparents bought several acres nearly 100 years ago. They built their home in Pottstown a few years later. People had to collect water from a spring as there was no running water otherwise. My grandfather and some of the men in the community approached the town of Huntersville about tapping into the water system. They were told that they had to find their own pipe and dig the ditches to install them so they could tap onto the water. The pipe was difficult to find and resources were scarce during this time. However, the men did find the pipe, though it was not to specification, and they laid it. Huntersville was informed to turn the water on, and the residents of Pottstown prayed that the water would at least have some force because the pipes were smaller than they should be. The water was delivered in full force, making it a winning issue for Pottstown. The neighbors went on to secure streetlights and paved streets. However, the curbing was not done properly, and drainage is so poor that has caused soil erosion that is still very apparent still today. Huntersville was asked to correct these problems. Also, when the landfill was open for construction waste, heavy trucks came down Central Avenue at a fast pace and became dangerous for seniors and children to walk. Residents of Pottstown requested 2- and 4-way stop signs on Central Avenue and Haltworks Road with signs stating no trucks allowed on Central. These signs have been removed, and there has been no attempt to enforce or maintain the stop signs. The traffic problem is worse today because drivers use Central Avenue to cut through to Vermilion. Improvements for Pottstown have been a bit slow to date, and now gentrification with its many ills, neglect of proper infrastructure, and lack of economic development and a real say in the decision-making have yet to come to the residents of Pottstown. The last county commissioners meeting I attended, fair housing was celebrated, and I look forward to seeing how the town of Huntersville is prioritizing the same. I appreciate your input and assistance. Thank you.
Ms. Williams, was that everything that you wanted to cover? Okay, because I did find more minutes for you. So I just wanted to make sure you didn't cut it short. Thank you. We'll now move on to Mr. Jeff Price. Mr. Price, as you come, you have 3 minutes. And if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jeff Price. My address is 9905 Duane Court. I'm the acting secretary of the HOA board of the Hamptons at North Cross. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. We would also like to thank the planners and engineering teams of the town of Huntersville for answering many of our questions regarding the recent development projects. Our community welcomes development, and we are thrilled to be part of such a thriving community. We are not here to be unrealistic about development. We are here to express concern over how many of these projects take place in such a siloed environment. It has only recently come to our attention that a 244-unit apartment complex is currently being planned on 10410 Samford Road under a by rights zoning act status. While we are aware this property's by right status does not require rezoning, we are here to communicate concern over such a massive apartment building and the impact it will have on surrounding single-family properties, neighborhoods, and citizens. Traffic congestion continues to increase at a rate that far exceeds our infrastructure capacity. All 5 neighborhoods in this Samford corridor from Target to CVS must take U-turns across a 4-lane highway to navigate around town or go to school. With this proposal, the residents of these 5 neighborhoods would be joined by a 425-person child care facility with before and after care and a 244-unit apartment complex, all within a half a mile. As the trustees responsible for sustainable growth in Huntersville, approving this project as is would endanger your constituents' lives and significantly lower their quality of life when other suitable properties are less than a mile away. We need better infrastructure foundations, processes, and regulations to help accommodate our increasing growth and development. How are we addressing sewage capacity, school overcrowding, police and fire response time, as well as traffic congestion and safety concerns? We also want to protect our parks and wildlife, encourage more open spaces, and protect tree canopy to preserve our beautiful town for the many generations to come. We are asking town officials to pause this project within the planning stages and work with the community to ensure the solutions on traffic implications, police, fire response time, and building modifications outside of what is mandatory are being addressed. We are not here representing one development or one cul-de-sac. We're representing a broad community across town, across developments who are mobilizing and bringing together many communities, neighborhoods, and HOAs so that our voices can be heard and taken seriously. We have significant support for our position, both emotionally and financially. A petition was created only 5 days ago and has already surpassed 800 signatures. In addition, our group is working with legal counsel to explore options and our rights as a community. We also invite you to come to the planning meeting with the town of Huntersville tomorrow at 6 p.m. for continued discussion on this project. Thank you for your time, dedication, and education on these important matters concerning the lives of your constituents.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Next up is, Jody Obaid? Did I say that even close? Obey. All right, thank you. You have 3 minutes, and if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Jody Obaid. I live in the Hamptons, and Jeff gave a really good presentation of the issue facing us. My husband, Nick, and I are some of the Hamptons residents who are directly impacted by this large project. Our home literally backs up to the parking lots of this project. And looking at the plans, the developer is planning to clear everything up into our property line. We always knew this was zoned single family, and in your planning map, like what was discussed, said that it's called neighborhood residential, and I get that. We're fine with a neighborhood, someone's backyard behind our home. Even some condos, not 4-story apartments that's currently planned. Why is Huntersville okay with parking lots with hundreds of cars abutting the backyards of homes with children? You know apartment complexes are not the same as homes. Yes, families do live there, but many of the residents are young people who are not empathetic to the privacy of their neighbors. Speed limits and noise are not a priority. Is it fair that families who border this complex must now keep their kids out of their own backyards or even accompany them for fear of all the strangers in speeding automobiles literally behind their yard? Huntersville, we ask that you reconsider this plan and at a minimum, shrink the number of apartments so we have a large buffer and cars and strangers are not in our backyards. Better yet, consider a housing development where we back up to another yard, not a parking lot. We urge you to please come take a look at the backyards that are directly affected by this, and some of those families are here right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bob Swarsh? Close?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, sir. And if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record and speak into the microphone.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Sarouche, 10302 Esley Court in Cambridge Grove. And I would like to introduce a term some of you may have never heard before, and that term is BFO. And that stands for blinding flash of the obvious. And so I got just a little hand-drawn map. And when I'm looking at the traffic congestion already on Sam Fur and Old Statesville, that's not taking into account the new multifamily housing on the south side of Caldwell Station that's near, I would say would be open within the next year, already in construction. The new Symphony Living multifamily on Sam Fur, the new Maple Branch Homes, the new Publix Superstore, and as previously mentioned, the new school, the new childcare facility. So the blinding flash of the obvious here is regardless of whether this Samford multifamily passes legal muster, our infrastructure can't keep up. And so the only thing I can think of that would solve the enormous traffic congestion that's going to occur here over the next several years is another massive pandemic where everybody's locked down and works remotely. So I would simply say I would simply appeal to common sense, looking at the incredible negative traffic congestion that this thing's going to add to, and simply ask that there's at least a couple of things. Somebody seriously has to consider a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit on Sam Fur. seriously. And one thing that could be done is that the town of Huntersville could do a traffic count by hour and post that on your website and keep it updated so people that are retired like me can know when not to go on Sanford. My recommendation.
Ms. Dolores Franks?
Oh, no, I'm giving my time to somebody else.
Okay, and is that, would that be Kim McDonald?
Oh, I gave my time to Jenny Burnside.
I don't have a Jenny Burnside.
Whoever wants to speak, they have my time.
I have 2 people left that have signed up. Give me just a second, and we'll see if they found any other papers back there. She's looking just to make sure. Okay. Well, just. I can't do that, because then that would be breaking our rules. No, I'm not gonna break rules. I'm not a rule breaker. No, I'm not. All right, so nothing. All right, so we do have Miss Dolores Franks and Miss Kim McDonald that have signed up to speak. Oh, you signed up to give time to who again?
Whoever wants to speak on.
That is you are the last 2.
Does somebody want to speak on behalf of the Hamptons?
Okay, I don't normally do that because of our rules, however, Miss,
If we didn't have someone sign up, we typically do not allow that.
I know, we do not. We do not. If either one of you would like to speak, you are more than welcome because you did sign up.
We were told to sign up and we could give our 3 minutes.
No, it does not. And unfortunately, she would have to sign up as well.
Well, that's who we thought was going to speak. Maybe we were wrong.
Honestly, it's fine. Jeff spoke on behalf of our neighborhood. I was on the subcommittee with Jeff. Honestly, I think the only thing that we wanted to know is if the commissioners and the mayor would be willing to meet with us on another platform where we could have some dialogue about the situation. I think that's all.
And you can have that conversation with the board after the board meeting. Thank you so very much. Okay. There's no one else that has signed up to speak, so we will now move to agenda changes. Are there any agenda changes this evening? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the agenda as adopted, or adopt the agenda as approved.
There's a motion to adopt the agenda and a second. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the agenda is adopted as presented. We will now move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
There is a motion and there is a second. All those in favor adopting the consent agenda? Any opposed? Seeing none, the consent agenda has been adopted. We will now move to the public hearing, item 9A.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. We'll give just a moment. We'll give just a moment as people are milling out.
How would I do that? You need to move the pump, though. He's got a point. They're handling that.
If we can close the door. Oh, we've got people coming in. Okay. Come on in and have a seat. All right. We are going,
Let's give it a second.
yeah, I'm going to give it another second. All right. So we will now move to our public hearing on petition TA 22-08. Ms. Malinks?
Hi, it's
The
good to
floor is
see you all
yours.
tonight. This is Kaylee from Planning, and I will be presenting text amendment 2208 and would like to enter my staff report into the record. This request is to amend the Town of Huntersville Code of Ordinances, Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 150 Minimum Housing Standards, and Chapter 152 Non-Residential Building Code to comply with language in North Carolina General Statute, Chapter 160D, Article 12 Minimum Housing Codes, and Chapter 160D, Article 11 Building Code Enforcement. This amendment is only to the Town Code of Ordinances and is not subject to the same procedures for a text amendment to the Town Zoning or Subdivision Ordinance. This amendment was not required to be reviewed by the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board or the Planning Board. The minimum housing standard amendments are regarding the regulation of dwelling units unfit for human habitation. The non-residential building code amendments are regarding the regulation of the repair, closing, and demolition of non-residential buildings or structures. The public hearing is being held tonight, July 18th. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, so we will open the discussion up to the board. Are there any questions? Commissioner Phillips?
Are we doing this because we want to do it, or are we doing it because it's legally required?
It's legally required.
Every bit of language in here, like, it cannot be altered?
Yes, it has to match with the current 160D citations to replace the 160A citations, which are no longer in existence, essentially.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the language in here, it talks about someone, the inspector, can make periodic inspections when reasonable cause is there. They make the decision. As our inspector or general contractor, are they qualified?
The county handles the enforcement of this ordinance on the town's behalf, subject to an interlocal agreement.
Is that inspector or general contractor?
I do not know that answer, but I could find out. I believe that it is an employee of the county and that they do have the proper credentials in place.
Because as I read this is a massive overreach by the state coming down into our local municipalities on what they consider unfit for human habitation. And it gives them the right to just go into any property that they see fit if they're driving by. As I read through this multiple page thing here, I'm not asking a question to you, Ms. Slip, I'm just making a statement. I just don't know what they were thinking at the state level. Obviously, they don't think that much up at the state level by many of our ordinances or statutes, but this is just confirming that they should slow down and read what they're actually passing. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Phillips?
What happens if we don't approve something like this? What kind of trouble do we get in?
It applies anyways because it's a statute.
So what I heard you say is it's a state statute. We have to follow the law.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We will now move to item 10A. Ms. Mullings? This is petition TA 22-08, minimum housing standards.
Yes, planning staff recommends approval of the text amendment application as proposed, and the recommended action is to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 150 and 152 of the Town of Huntersville Code of Ordinances.
Is there a motion on the floor? Yes, Commissioner Boone.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt TA 22-08, a request by the Town of Huntersville to amend the Town of Huntersville Code of Ordinance, Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 150, Minimum Housing Standards, and Chapter 152, Non-Residential Building Code to comply with the updates to Chapter 160D, Article 12, Minimal Housing Codes on the regulation of dwelling units unfit for human habitat to comply with the updates made to Chapter 160D, Article 11, Building Code Enforcement regarding minimal standards for non-residential development.
Is there a second? Commissioner Partee. There is a motion, there is a second. All those in favor of the motion?
Discussion.
Oh, absolutely. Commissioner Kidwell.
I'm not going to support this tonight. I think this is something that it started on July 1st, I believe. Here we are on the 18th, rolling this right through. It may be a state law, it may be a state statute, but this is where our legislative committee should be really diving into this and working with the league, saying this has to change. All right, this is a massive overreach of allowing the government to come in and say, we don't approve of how you live, you need to change your ways. I've grown up in all types of housing, and some of the places I grew up, trailers. For instance, some people wouldn't consider that to be a home. Oh, you grew up in a trailer, you were raised in a trailer, oh, you're trailer trash. I've heard that. All right, and this worries me about our trailer communities that we do have in Huntersville. It worries me about our homes in other areas of Huntersville, that someone driving by could easily say, you know what, I just don't think that home's fit. I'm gonna go knock on their door. Creates havoc for our citizens, creates havoc for our town, and it needs to be seriously gone through and reviewed. So I will not be supporting this regardless of it being a state law.
Commissioner Phillips.
I cannot support this. This is legalizing gentrification. It is systematic racism like I've never read in an ordinance before. I read the whole thing, so I'll spare you guys some lines. Would attract persons intent on criminal activities. That's disgusting. It also says things, use by vagrants as living quarters in the absence of a sanitary facilities. I have spent years working with the homeless community. And yes, you know what? Sometimes people end up in homes that may not be to my quality, but a roof is a roof. It's better than a tent. I feel like this also encourages landlords and others to pick on others that are here who may pay for their rent in cash. Their landlords don't keep their properties up to code. Should they? Yes. But I feel like this is creating a situation where we are railroading gentrification because we're setting standards, and these standards in here are very subjective. This is not okay. I'm shaking because I'm so upset, and I think that it's disgusting that our state would run with something like this, and I refuse, I don't care, to vote for something like this because it is morally wrong. It may be legally okay, but it's morally wrong.
Ms. Sloop, I have a couple of questions. The old ordinance that we're replacing it with, was it also,
It also allowed for inspections, yes. Only the underlined language is the new language. The other language is the existing language that was already in the current ordinance. The county also, I would just remind you, reviewed this ordinance because they enforce it on our behalf and signed off on the edits as drafted.
So all the new language and the language that was struck out of this ordinance, you're saying that the county, Mecklenburg County, has already adopted it?
So we submitted this to the county to review because they enforce it on our behalf prior to bringing it to the town board. There were several months of review prior to bringing it to the town board, and going back and forth working with planning staff as well. So just to reiterate, only the underlined language is the new language, and then you'll see the strike through as pieces that were removed from the prior ordinance, or the existing ordinance, I should say.
Well, some of the underlined stuff in here too that they've added, defects therein increasing the hazards of fire. Fires are bad. Accidents, yes, that's okay. Other calamities, lack of adequate ventilation, light, or sanitary facilities. Dilapidation, disrepair, structural defects, or uncleanliness. Who are we to tell somebody what's clean, what's not? And it just leaves so much to be interpreted. Disrepair, well, there's a lot of homes in Huntersville that may be in disrepair, but that's somebody's home and dwelling. And then you sit here, you throw fines on them, you force them to do stuff. If they could afford to fix it, they would have already fixed it.
I think that's something that this board can take a look at, Commissioner Phillips, in regards to grants for folks. That's something that I know we've had conversations around regarding affordable housing and making sure that there's some grant opportunities or some partnering with other nonprofits to make sure that citizens who do have some issues with their homes, that they do have the resources to be able to repair them. And I would encourage, this is law. Regardless of whether this board chooses to adopt it or not, we're still held to it. So I would encourage this board, as we continue to talk about affordable housing, continue to talk about how we can provide some assistance to our residents, that we use this as a teachable moment for ourselves and make sure that what we do build is something that will add value to our citizens. That would be what I would like to see us do. Commissioner Kovacs?
And I wholeheartedly agree, and I want to get the word out there and help, but unfortunately, if it does get to the point where they're so far behind on fines, then it's already detrimental to them. But I was wondering, Ms. Sloop, is there any way, do we have any leeway to take away some of the subjectivity? I mean, like uncleanliness is the perfect example. How do we define that?
Yeah, and so we have modeled the edits to the ordinance to align specifically to the language of the statute.
And that language was included in you all's packet as well, the relevant pages from the articles.
By the way, not against you.
Oh, no. I just want to make sure you all knew you had that.
No, I know, and I'm sorry, I know you guys work hard on this and we're tearing it to pieces, but it's very concerning.
Ms. Sloop, when the county comes, is it completely subjective with our
Again, they're trained to make the determinations as to whether or not it is unfit or uninhabitable for human habitation based on their licensing.
Okay. Commissioner Kidwell?
One of the lines, and they may be trained, and I use that term loosely because I know the county is behind in hiring, and they're behind in inspections as well. And I speak that from a manufacturing standpoint. When I'm asking for a county inspector to come out for a ventilation system, they're telling me 6 to 9 months, which totally changes how I run a manufacturing facility. But in this one line, if the inspector determines that the continued occupancy, is that the line? Yes. Determines the repair, alteration, or improvement of the dwelling can be made at a reasonable cost, it will make sure that the individual knows that they should be repairing it. Yeah, number one, what's reasonable, but number two, cost. Things are not cheap. Wood is not cheap. I know it's gone down a little bit, but the cost to build a small deck right now, a 10 by 10 deck is still like $2,000. So imagine someone just driving by your house, coming there and say, you know what, front porch, I don't know, it looks a little shaky. I think it's only going to cost about $6,000 to fix. Make sure you take care of that. I'll be back in a week.
Commissioner Partee?
Thank you, Mayor. I got to throw out a term called zombie housing. In my career as an undercover drug buy, working buying drugs from zombie homes, vacant homes, abandoned homes, I can see where the county is going in trying to prevent these abandoned houses from being turned into zombie homes. And I can understand what Commissioner, I can feel your pain, but it's not, when you talk about systemic racism, you gotta be able to have the experience of walking into homes where children, there's no light, there's no heat, there's no windows broken out, the roaches are moving across the wall. These are homes where these folks are living in that needs to be condemned, but also there has to be social programs like we talked about to come in and revitalize these homes. I've been in crack houses, I've been in heroin dens, undercover, where people are just surviving. So I talk from experience of seeing these homes, these zombie homes turned into drug houses. So therefore, even though we live in Huntersville, we might not see those type of homes, and I'm glad we do not. But I can see where the county is going and where they're trying to project and where they're trying to protect their citizens. Because as we grow as a community, I'm gonna tell you right now, drugs will be coming into this community. So we gotta stay up upon it, we gotta stay ahead of it. And if we got homes where these drug dealers can walk into and just turn it into a drug house and start selling drugs, then we need to be on top of it right now. We need to convert these homes, bring them up to specs. And these inspectors not going in there kicking people out. They're doing it for safety reasons. Because when the winter comes and you got children that are sleeping not in the blankets, but they're sleeping on the clothes, on the floor, because people gotta survive. You wanna go into a black community, I'll take you to some very black communities. I'll take you to the hood and show you the real hood. So therefore, I can see where this statute is going. It's law. We got to pass it because it's law. But I understand and sympathize with my fellow commissioners. But I've lived in the streets. I'm from the streets. And I know what's going on in the streets because I've been there. And as a homicide detective, I had to take needles out of dead drug addicts' arms in these abandoned homes. So therefore, I say we pass this ordinance, it's law, and we work with the community to upgrade the homes that we feel that are abandoned or on the cusp of being a demolition or abandoned house. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? There is a motion on the floor, and there is a second. Hold on. There we go. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes. It's 2-2 with one abstention. All right, we will now move to, thank you, Ms. Mullins. Ms. Spite, we are now moving on to petition R21-13, Calamari at Caldwell Station. Good evening. I will turn this over to you as you enter your staff report.
Okay, I'd like to enter the staff report into the record. So R21-13 is for the Calamari Senior Living Facility that is located on Knox Road near the border with Cornelius. The proposal is for 134 unit development senior apartments that are deed restricted. I'm not going to go through the entire thing because I know you all are familiar with it. I'm just going to go to some updates from the planning board meeting. There was a request from staff for some data about the proposed senior apartments that are in review for planned approved apartments that are yet unbuilt and for existing apartments. So we're just going to give you that information. In review right now, there are 284 units that are currently under review. These are senior family developments only. And then 450 units that are approved but unbuilt, and then 446 units that are existing. 446 units that are existing.
And all of these are senior?
Senior. And there was also, let's skip ahead a little bit here. So some of the site plan issues that came up in the planning board meeting were with regard to the massing along Will Knox Road and the tree save and parking. So staff has been talking back and forth with the applicants about how they're addressing that, and they are addressing those comments. They have the revision that was inquired about with regard to the exterior parking garages from the planning board. And those are planned to have doors now. There is some discussion on the end of the applicants with regard to some other developments that they have a similar amount of parking that was provided, and they believe that this will be adequate for this site. But I believe that they're here and they can address that if you have a question about that. Outside of that, the applicant is requesting vesting from the town board with regard to the tree save, TIA, and landscaping requirements. They are required to come up to code for lighting and sign requirements. Now, regardless of the fact that they're requesting that vesting, they do plan to either meet or exceed the tree save requirement. TIA indicated there are no improvements required, and they are proposing to keep the 20-foot perimeter buffer around the property as well. That is not required, but they are going to either keep it or plant as necessary, and that's something that we are working with the applicant on. And they just have not had an opportunity to resubmit. That's why I said we're still working with them on that. So staff recommends approval as noted, and with the request that they add the appropriate notes that are described in the staff report. I'm happy to take any questions that you have at this time.
The chair will open it up for questions. Commissioner Partee.
Just one question. Will there be a traffic light proposed at the intersection of Will Knox Road and 115?
No, there will not.
Why not?
Well, I know one was not required as a part of this development.
I know, but we've in the past, we've had a lot of traffic congestion there on that particular road. And moving forward, as we increase the amount of residents and housing there, I believe there's going to be a need for a traffic light there. Okay. So I'm just putting that out there on the record that we need to look into that.
Understood.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kovacs?
Don't hate me.
Okay.
Okay, so we went from 108 to 34.
Yep.
So almost a 25% increase. So what is the units per acre now? Never mind, I can do the math, it's fine. What is the reasoning behind the applicant wishing to keep the vesting of the plan? What does it benefit? What is the?
So technically, if they are requesting vesting, then they would not be required to comply with the current ordinance. It would be their option to comply with the current ordinance.
And I would like to clarify, it went from office buildings to 5 3-story apartment buildings to 1 3-story apartment building? And they're trying to keep the office space
They're not
approval?
office space.
No, sorry, I know, but they're trying to keep what was approved in 1999, the vested.
Yeah, and that would have been the residential development, the 5
Or 1998.
Yep.
That was 2006 though, right?
Yes, so 1998 Okay, so.
I know.
Yeah, the ordinance in 1998, yes, but what happened was they came back in 2006, as you're aware, for a revision to the residential senior family units. So they still want to do the residential senior family units, but they want to be vested in the 98 code, which would not require them to do the tree save or, yeah, that's pretty much the tree save, because the water quality was shown on the 2006 plan, actually.
And when we say, sorry, I got a lot, I know, don't hate. So the TIA was not I just want to clarify, a TIA, when we're referring to that one, that is current one, we're not referring to one in 2006 or, okay. I have questions all over. And you said we still don't have the stormwater drainage system, that's under review?
It's not been approved, but it wouldn't be approved until until the town board approves anyway, but no, it hasn't been approved.
And we don't have a willingness to serve, that won't be from Charlotte Water? I'm just
No,
reading from
yes,
here.
they,
Will need to be provided? Maybe I missed it in the packet. My question about that was just, are we going to have anything?
oh, this is, so when they come in, they're gonna have to like get approval from Charlotte. They just don't have that yet, but they will. So the willingness to serve would be included in our review.
Okay.
Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. The 1998 ordinance says no lighting ordinance. Has the applicant addressed that?
Yes, they're going to comply with the current ordinance,
What year or
the current ordinance.
Any other questions? Commissioner Boone? Since we are letting everybody speak, normally I would, out of the gate, ask for a motion, but since there were questions out of the gate, I want to make sure everybody has a chance. Commissioner Kidwell? Commissioner Phillips? Any other questions? Commissioner Partee? All right. Now, Commissioner Boone, you have a motion?
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. In considering the proposed rezoning petition, R21-13, Calamari Senior Living Facility, the town board recommends, excuse me, approval based on the amendment being consistent with land use 1.1 and 10.5 of the Huntersville 2040 plan with the character of the existing adjacent development. It is reasonable in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance with a condition that the plan meet or exceed the current lighting standards.
Is there a second? Is there any additional discussion? Commissioner Kovacs.
I am not in support of this. The vesting really has me concerned. I think if we're going to comply, then we don't need that. It makes me very uncomfortable. I also looking at the 2006 plan compared to this plan, I am honestly more in favor of the 2006 plan. It looked great, but I'm also concerned with the safety of this building. I know we've brought it up multiple times, as we just discussed, how many things we've approved lately with senior housing, and usually it's Commissioner Boone asking this question, but we have a lot of calls for emergency services out to a lot of these facilities, and when we have these big, long facilities, it's a little less accessible for our emergency services to reach the patients or the people that they're trying to get. And so one of the things I was excited about the 2006 plan, which I know we're not voting on, but I liked the separate buildings because it did allow for a little bit more of that safety and access to people that were in need because time is of the essence. So I'm not in support of this plan based on how it is currently and with the request for it to be vested.
Thank you.
I do know that we have a motion and we have a second. My question to the board is, would they like to also hear from the petitioner this evening? If we could hear from the petitioner, please.
Do I need to give my name and address?
Yes, please.
All right, Steve Singleton, 2623 Oxborough Drive, Matthews, North Carolina. So I represent the petitioner, and as their consultant. I just wanted to clarify a few things. So along the process, we have worked extensively with staff through this process. And so regarding the vesting, which continues to come up, and I will say even for us, it's been a little confusing, but from day one, it was recommended from staff that we pursue the vesting because it was tied to the original Caldwell Station development. We, and I'll speak for my client as well, really don't care about the vesting, and we're happy to meet or exceed the current development ordinance. Everything on our plan, we exceed the tree save. We're trying our hardest to save more of the specimen trees and some of the trees that we know are kind of important to the site. And so with regard to the landscape that is not required under the vesting of the 98 ordinance, we are still going to meet or exceed it. So I guess I'm just here to say we're happy to accept either from you guys regarding the development. Same with water quality, which wasn't required under the 98 ordinance. We are proposing a sand filter, so even though it's not required, we're still providing that low impact development and water quality treatment. And then as well as buffering, we're meeting everything that's on or in the current ordinance, if you will. So again, I just wanted to clarify that if vesting is an issue, we're happy to meet the current ordinance. And let's see, was there another concern or question? Yeah, the lighting, we're going to meet or exceed lighting anyway, and we would, especially being that it's a senior facility, to be safe. It'll have all the standard lighting minimums. As far as emergency access too, I just wanted to point out, a lot of things that we look at when we do our site planning is to meet fire marshal and fire access, and so this certainly meets that. In a lot of ways, having one building is probably safer because we have 3 direct access points into this building. So it's consolidated, but for access, it makes it easier to get in and out of from an emergency situation. So I think some of the concerns, while very valid, have been addressed with this current site plan.
Are there any questions for the applicant this evening from the board?
I'm sorry, I'm the applicant. My name is Jim Jervis, 306 Tinderbox Lane, Fort Mills, South Carolina, although a native of North Carolina. I wanted to address a couple things. One is, I mentioned in one of the previous hearings, there are 10,000 people turning 65 every day in the United States. In Huntersville alone, 30% of your population is 55 and above. That's 17,000 people today in Huntersville, 17,100 that are 55 and above. And what happens is our folks want to sell their home, they want to live in the area, they want to have their friends and families and everything else that they do around the area, but they want to downsize. They want to lock it and leave it. They don't want to have stairs, they want it one floor, and they want to be able to just come and, we have all kinds of activities, an activity director on staff to provide, things for them to do. They're there with like-minded people. And part of the 55 and plus D restriction is so we don't have children and kids and those kinds of things there. These people want peace and quiet and want to be able to come and go as they please. It's also projected that Huntersville will have a 9% per annum growth of seniors every year for the next 6 years. So that's another 1,700 people a year that are turning 55 and above. And so at 134 units, you're still going to be below your threshold of what you have available housing for people that want active lifestyle, not, they want to be independent, not assisted living, not memory care, not skilled nursing. So, we want to be a part of the community. We've worked very hard to make the adjustments.
the tree save, the water quality, breaking up the front building, and those types of things. And from a traffic perspective, as I mentioned before, 80% of our folks are going to have one car because they don't have roommates or anything else. 20% are going to rely on Uber, public transportation, or some other form to get around. So that's why the traffic impact study. Our folks aren't leaving in the morning to go to work or going to pick up kids or those kinds of things. So they don't really impact from a traffic perspective because we would have paid for that study. So I hope you'll support it. It'll be a great asset for the community, and we're excited about being here. Any other questions for me?
Any questions at this time? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so very much for coming up to speak.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right, so we have a motion, and there is a second. We'll go for the vote. All those in favor? And those opposed? The motion passes 3-2. Thank you very much. We will now move to item 10C. And Mr. Pete, please bear with me as I change things around a little bit here. This is a quasi-judicial hearing on the Hamlet at Huntersville Subdivision Sketch Plan. We will be conducting an evidentiary hearing. And if you will give me just a moment as I pull these together to make sure I don't forget anyone. Okay. Now, everyone here has the joy of listening to me read through a script this evening. So as we go through this, please bear with. This hearing is a quasi-judicial hearing on the applications submitted for the Hamlet at Huntersville Subdivision Sketch Plan. Quasi-judicial hearings are evidentiary in nature. Only parties with standing, including the applicant, the property owner, local government, and individuals who can show that they will suffer special damages, have the right to participate fully in the hearing. Special damages must be particularized, separate, and distinct from damages to the public at large. Special damages are a fact-specific inquiry. While proximity may bear weight in the determination of special damages, proximity in and of itself is insufficient to grant standing. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Other individuals may, but are not required to be, allowed to speak as a witness. However, they will not be allowed to participate fully as a party, such as by questioning other witnesses or by calling other persons to testify. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. General witness testimony is limited to facts, not personal preferences or opinions. Certain topics require expert witnesses, including projections about impacts on property values and traffic impacts. Individuals providing expert opinion testimony must be qualified experts and provide the factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. Mere conclusory testimony lacking the foundation of the expert's opinion is insufficient to establish the existence or non-existence of a fact or conclusion. The board must base quasi-judicial decisions upon competent material and substantial evidence in the record. Competent evidence is evidence that is sufficiently trustworthy and reliable, and that is legally fit and acceptable for consideration by the board. Speculative, irrelevant, or vague evidence, non-expert opinions as to something that requires an expert, and non-accepted hearsay evidence will likely not be competent evidence. Material evidence is evidence that shows that the standards will or will not be met. Evidence is substantial if it is relevant and regarded by a reasonable person as sufficient to support a specific conclusion. Speculation, unsubstantiated fears of the community, or vague assertions do not constitute substantial evidence. Quasi-judicial hearings are constrained by the standards of the ordinance and the facts presented. Even though the board may hear other evidence, it is not objected to. Let me repeat that. Even though the board may hear other evidence, if it is not objected to, the board should rely on competent material and substantial evidence in making its decision. The board will recognize the applicant as a party, as well as the property owner, if different from the applicant. Are there other persons who believe they have standing to participate fully as a party? If so, please come forward at this time. Please come forward. However, if you do not wish to participate as a party, please wait to come up until after we have identified parties with standing. Is there anyone else who believes they have standing? Sir, if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium and giving us your name and your address and briefly explain why you believe, state the reasons why you believe you have standing.
Good evening. My name is George Solomon. I live at 13600 Toka Court in Huntersville. I am a former member of the steering committee for the 2040 Planning Commission, and I am the treasurer and the board member of the HOA in Plum Creek. I believe we have standing because we'd like to speak to the board in regards to the access to our community and the change in what will happen by putting two unlike communities next to each other and opening up a road between the two of them.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Solomon. Are you here representing your HOA?
Yes,
So you serve on your HOA board?
I do.
Okay. So, Ms. Sloop, my understanding is that he would qualify as a party with standing?
The only way that an HOA would qualify is if someone who is a member of the HOA would personally have standing and establishes that. Also, I'll remind you about the importance of having an expert to testify with regards to traffic impacts per statute that is
Correct.
required to prove standing.
That is correct. Let me get to my other.
If I may say, it's not the traffic issue, it's the access issue that we're concerned with.
Mr. Solomon, at this time, I don't believe that you have standing as a party. However, it's possible that you, give me a second here as I flip back through all of this great paperwork that I have to follow.
That's okay.
Non-party.
Thank you. You may have an opportunity to be a non-party and speak at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Was there anyone else that believed they had standing to be a party? All right. a moment. I have to get back to where I am. Those who are, have standing, if you would please come up. That would be the applicant, property owner, and as well as Mr. Pete representing town staff. Is the applicant here this, hello, sir. And is there anyone else with the applicant that, and would you please come up and identify yourselves?
Steve Farmartino, I work for Middleburg Communities. Do I say my address now, or?
Please.
1 Ashton Street, Charleston, South Carolina, 29403.
And if you wouldn't mind say your last name again.
It's Farmartino.
Farmartino. All right.
Jason Pfister, also with Middleburg Communities. It's PFISTER. Address is 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 201, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27612.
And I am Thomas Habapro from Design Resource Group. I live at 2930 Chelsea Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina.
And would you mind saying your last name one more time?
Carefully and slowly.
Yes, please.
It's Habapro, Haapapuro.
HAA.
PAP.
PAP.
URO. Not the first time I've done this.
URO. Thank you so very much. I'm glad to know I'm not the first one to do that. All right, so we have the applicant. Is there a property owner also here this evening?
Do not believe so.
Okay, so we have the applicant and we have staff. Will each party withstanding tell me the witnesses they intend to call, if any? Should you have one? And if one at a time, please.
Other than Mr. Farmartino and myself, our engineer and land planner, Thomas, would be our only witness.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there other persons who do not qualify to be a party, but who would like to testify? Is there anyone here that would like to testify? Mr. Solomon? Yes. All right. The parties in this case are entitled to an impartial board. A board member may not participate in this hearing if she or he has a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close relationship with an affected person. Does any board member have any conflicts of interest to offer at tonight's meeting? Commissioner Boone?
Mr. Solomon, I belong to the same Rotary Club.
Okay, thank you for disclosing that. Is that going to affect your decision-making this evening? Could you speak into the microphone for us, please?
It will not affect my decision.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. The parties to this case have rights for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about the case outside of the hearing. That may be email communications as well as conversations with parties, staff, or the general public. Does any board member have any ex parte communications to disclose? Commissioner Phillips.
I've received emails over this, but I never read them.
Commissioner Kidwell.
I received emails and I read every one of them.
And is that going to affect your decision-making?
Nope.
Thank you. Commissioner Kovacs.
I've received emails as well, and I read one until I realized I couldn't.
And will that affect your decision-making? Okay. Commissioner Boone?
I too have received emails, and that will not affect my decision. I did read some of them, but not all of them.
Thank you. Commissioner Partee?
I did receive emails.
Could you mind speaking into your microphone?
I did receive emails. It won't affect my decision.
Thank you. Based off the disclosures we've heard from the board concerning partiality and ex parte communications, does any member of the board or any party to this matter have an objection to the board members' participation in this hearing? No? Okay. I'd like to call on planning staff for the presentation of their staff report. I'm sorry?
Swearing in?
Oh, yeah, we do have to do that, don't we? If you wouldn't mind bringing the Bible, if we have it. Thank you very much. And we will do this in order. Mr. Pete, thank you very much for raising the right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you. Now, if the applicant will please come up, all three of you. Place your left hand on the Bible, right hand up. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, thank you very much. And last but not least, our non-party member, Mr. Solomon, if you wouldn't mind. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I will get to both of you. I thought you would have come with Dave, with Mr. Pete. Hold on. Mr. Solomon, thank you very much. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence that you shall give to this board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you, sir. Now, Mr. Trott and Mr. Semino, last but not least, I know it seems a little awkward, but it's a whole lot better than all of you trying to jam in here with, especially with COVID still going around. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Right. Now, I would like to call on the planning staff for the presentation of their report, their staff report.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'd like to enter the staff report into the record. I will give you a brief overview of the request and bring you up to speed. Also want to point out that I have placed at your dais an updated staff report with some information in red, and I'll be going over that as well. So the property is located there in the hatching in the middle of the image. It is located along 115, immediately north of the Plum Creek development and immediately south of Lake Norman Charter School. And it does front on 115, and it is zoned in our neighborhood residential 100%. This is a quick context map just to show you that to the west are primarily some civic uses. You got CPCC's campus, the athletic park for the town of Huntersville, as well as the recycling center for Mecklenburg County. Plum Creek to the south, as we mentioned. And then you have the top part of the Brighton development across 115. And then you have Southwire and other large industrial uses across from Lake Norman Charter. This is just a color rendering very quickly to show you the layout that is proposed. This is on this 43.91 acres. The proposal here is for 265 for-rent units. That they are made up of 187 single-family or detached style, and then there are 78 townhome or attached style units. The overall density of the project is 6.15 units per acre. However, I'll be pointing out a very specific unique feature of that density in just a few minutes. I will point out that there were 2 neighborhood meetings that were conducted based upon some significant changes to the project as it moved through review. Primarily, there was a significant acreage addition from the very first version of the plan. And I won't back up to that, but just to let you know that it's definitely been through several iterations of the project. Again, here's a summary of what I just mentioned. You can see there the parking at the bottom, 383 spaces required per ordinance, and they're providing 667 that are distributed throughout the project. The 2040 community plan has this identified as within the town core. You can see the red dot there on the screen. It is, the definition of the town core is shown there, and we can visit that if you'd like to. Along the bottom of the plan, I am happy to touch on or elaborate on any of these individual items, but I would just show you that the 2040 plan elements, including environmental, land use, are outlined there at the bottom as being applicable to this particular request. Here is a more detailed image showing the site plan, and I will go through and touch on some other elements of this as we move through the particulars. One of the things that I mentioned about how a dense project like this and a development like Plum Creek to the south can cohabitate is through transitions. The 2040 plan speaks to this, our zoning ordinance speaks to this, and so does subdivision regulations. And so that is how, there's a lot of ways that you can do that. This particular project has approached this in 3 specific ways that I'm going to outline. One of the ways that it looked at this was to make sure that the connection of the street that has been stubbed since the beginning of Plum Creek, as well as there are many stubs in Plum Creek, that road stub was not a direct connection, and it did not necessarily service the majority of the project into that development. And so through a series of site plans, as you can see, if you were to exit out of Plum Creek to the north into this project, the road curves very sharply and then moves out to 115. More to the point, as the larger population moves south and tries to exit this development, it is not a direct connection into the adjacent property. It's moving out to 115. So let's just hold that element for just a second, because again, I'm building these 3 parts. The second item is that they very purposely reduce the density along the southern boundary. Now, you can see in the upper left that there's a summary chart, and Plum Creek has a density of 2.67 units per acre. The density in the red in Plum Creek, which is the colored area south of the white site plan, is actually 2.59. Above in the white, the Plum Creek, the Hamlet project is providing 4.69. So again, the entirety of the project, 6.15, but they very specifically reduced the density on their own accord to work to create a transition along that southern boundary that is not quite matching Plum Creek, but is moving in that direction. So that would be element number 2. And then the last is enhancement of a buffer along the southern boundary. As you well know, our buffer requirement for residential projects is a minimum of 20 feet planted, or you can use the existing vegetation if it is of a certain quality. But if you look in the upper right of this particular image, what you'll see is they are using the 20-foot minimum, and then they are adding an additional 30 feet that will be fully landscaped. And they will also, and it is a little hard to see, but almost right there in the middle at the 20 and 30 break, they're going to have a 6-foot opaque fence running through the middle of the project that the property owner or HOA will maintain. So in total, it'll be 50 feet of buffer, and that will be more than likely planted along this particular edge. And the reason I point that out, and again, just to make make sure everyone's aware, the nature of the existing vegetation on the southern boundary is not necessarily thick or great. The applicants, if they were to be approved and go to the construction phase, we would do an analysis and walk it and make sure that it is an acceptable quality to serve as that buffer. But having said that, if it is not, there is notation that they will plant specifically to make sure that it complies. So just wanted to show you a couple of images just showing you that really the vegetation on the site kind of doesn't start until you're quite a ways in. The red lines represent the depths of the buffer that they would propose. So wanted to make sure that while leaving the existing vegetation in concept is a goal, it sounds great, you certainly have to have it there to save it. TIA, Transportation Impact Analysis, was required. You can see in on the left side of the screen in the 2 bubbles that there are requirements that were needed to be, that were deemed appropriate. And on the right, you can see a blow up there of how that translates to the two entrances of this development onto 115. Essentially, you're going to have a throat that is adjacent to 115 with left outs, a right, and then one moving in. And then you'll also have a decel lane southbound on 115 and a middle turn lane on northbound 115. And that would be in both instances for both of those elements. Also, I should mention sidewalk and bike lane along 115 as well. This is a quick outline of where the urban open spaces are located. Again, every unit must be within a quarter-mile walk of urban open space, which is a very specific type of urban open space, not just your common area. So the areas in green highlight where those are. To the west, you will see that there is, or to the left of your screen, you'll see that where the creek is located, there is a trail system that goes through. The trail in and of itself is not a urban open space, but it is moving through the common open space. Another highlight that I thought was important was that there will be trails from this development that will connect into the Huntersville Athletic Park as well. The town is working on some trail enhancements on the property, and whenever that is identified, these will be able to tie into that. So moving the residents here over to the civic uses to the west. This is the CMS report. You've seen these before. This is the estimation of what this project will put into the system to the schools that are assigned to it. With having said that, the three-part test for a subdivision sketch plan are that the application be complete. Staff finds that it is and recommends that. The second part is looking for compliance with all applicable requirements. In the bulleted items, you'll see these were the concerns that the staff report initially brought forward, and they were taken to the planning board. The item in red indicates that how the applicant has addressed those issues since the planning board's meeting. So the urban open spaces have been identified correctly, and they are indicated. The transportation comments that need to be addressed, that's speaking to the minor requirements that would be out there, like maybe striping for a crosswalk or something like that. The mail kiosk location has been identified. The water quality concept plan, that has not been officially approved, however. We do not know of any major issues, and they will not be able to proceed without it, so that is a must-do situation. Again, you can see that one of the other channel transportation comments was that there was some curve radii. The sharpness of some of the curves was not in keeping with our design manuals and engineering standards, and they have addressed that. The applicants are here, but it's my understanding that they have sent over a site plan that shows every one of them is in compliance with our requirements for that. And so then as a catch-all, our last bullet there is that your general miscellaneous red lines would be addressed as well. The next section here speaks to recommendations, and these were staff recommendations, not ordinance requirements that were passed along. And again, I can elaborate on any of these, but very quickly I'll say that there were a couple of sidewalk sections that were sort of running straight along a line on some of the streets. And the effect was actually reducing some of the space around the residential units that the residents could utilize. And so the recommendation was to keep those sidewalks in the normal location, 7-foot planting strip and then the sidewalk, and allowing more open space near that residential unit. And the applicants have agreed to do that, and they've done it wherever they can possibly do that. There was again, this is the second bullet is about an urban open space that was labeled a serpentine colonnade, which spoke to the way that the sidewalk moved, but it was not satisfying the requirements of that particular urban open space. So they have changed the design and is compliant. Number 3 was the parking near the clubhouse. Again, there's a lot of units here, and the recommendation was they certainly could use as much parking around the clubhouse as possible. They have added 4 spaces near there. We would continue to encourage additional, but it is compliant, and that needs to be stated very clearly. The 4th bullet is the elevations that face our public streets. We do have a provision that they need to not have blank walls. And so they've identified, and I can go back to it, but they identified a lot of these opportunities for a blank wall, if you will, on the site plan that you saw with a red line, but it did not encompass all of where those particular areas are. And so they've committed through their note that they will not allow those blank walls to exist as they face public streets. So with these elements, staff was able to recommend that we could support it and find it compliant, subject to these conditions. Last month, on May 24th, the planning board reviewed this, and they voted 9-0 to approve, subject to the conditions that were outlined just now. And if you'd like me to go through that very specifically, I can, but they reiterated the requirements and the recommendations of staff and identified all of that. That is the formal presentation that I have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, the applicants are here as well to speak to this.
Board, are there any questions for Mr. Pete at this time? I'm sorry, Commissioner Boone?
Madam Mayor, I've got several questions, but I'd like to wait until I hear the applicant's presentation.
Yep, that's fine. So I will move to the applicant. I am sure you would like to speak, so if you wouldn't mind coming on up and sharing with the board. Before you begin, again, please state your name and address for the record and your relation to the case.
Steve Farmartino, I'm the applicant for the case. And again, David, thank you. We've been working with Mr. Pete and staff for a little over a year now, and this site plan, as he alluded to, has gone through many variations. We originally just had the Abbott piece, then we got the Whitener piece under contract, which obviously shuffled up the site plan, increased the unit count quite a bit. So I just wanted to address what David said was outstanding as part of the conditions. We'd worked leading up to this meeting after the Planning Commission to address everything that we could. The minor transportation comments he alluded to, I believe, are addressed in the latest site plan, and we have DRG working to make a full resubmittal to sketch plan with everything that has been highlighted to us. The water quality concept, we got feedback from staff that they do not expect additional comments at this point, but if pending additional comments, we're happy to address and satisfy those as needed. The clubhouse parking, David, I don't know if you have my slide.
Oh, at the end?
Yeah.
It'll take a minute, but I do.
Okay, so this is the older one. So you can see where that B3 unit is up next to the clubhouse. We moved that unit out of what we're calling the pod. It's how we distinguish basically where we measure the parking ratio in. It's that dashed boundary. Pod 5 had 21 units. We relocated the B3 to another pod, added 4 parking. So it increased the parking count and lowered the parking requirements for that pod for the sake of the residents. And if you were to take and double the code required 7 spaces for the club, I believe you still fall above what the code requires. So it is our opinion that with that change, the parking level is satisfactory for that area. And that's something we can work through with staff on this upcoming submittal. But outside of that, I know that there's been a lot of talk about the connection to Horchland Lane, or Horchland Court, excuse me. And our position has always been we're trying to be a friendly neighbor. We went above and beyond with the buffer. And we're happy seeing that. I just want to say for the record, seeing that as an emergency access only. I know that the code requires that through the subdivision ordinance for a connection. But I did just want to get that out there, that emergency access is something that we would support and would not push back against. But at this point, not to belabor anything that David spoke to, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Board, we will open this up for discussion and questions for the applicant. Commissioner Kovacs.
Could you clarify what you said about the B3? Well,
I'm going to go to the updated site plan.
thank you. I was very confused.
Yes.
Sorry.
This is a pointer.
Where are they?
You go back. Should if you hit the top button. I think that's what it is.
So you see right up here, there was a unit in this location that we relocated here and then added the 4 parking spaces.
Where did the people in the other B3 south of the backgammon board? I don't know. Yes, that. Where do they park? Are there,
They'd be parking in this. This is a private drive right here with head-in parking. And they'd be parking here and making a walk down to their unit here. Typically, the way we program is to have a minimum of 2 spaces within 150 feet of the unit. It's a standard land planning principle that we try to abide to. Obviously, parking has been a big topic for us with staff, and we think that with the level of parking provided, obviously you can't control who parks on a public street, but we think our residents are going to have more than enough parking.
this is for staff.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Partee? Okay. Commissioner.
Oh, okay. We're going to age before. Mr. Pfister, wow, thank you for your presentation. Ms. Sloop, if I tend to go out of the scope of questioning, will you just bring me back in a little bit, please? Mr. Pfister, you have developed a very dense community. How many townhomes and homes does Middleburg communities need to construct in order to make a profit?
Just like to clarify for the record, I'm Mr. Pfister. That's Steve Martin.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Commissioner, honestly, I think that question is speculative and not really relevant to the topic before us. And I personally don't have any knowledge of that information.
Okay, let me rephrase it this way. What is your anticipated profit margin on this community?
We don't have that information at this time.
Okay, what is the lowest number of single-family homes built to make a profit? Am I out of my scope? Okay. What's the reason to rent townhomes as opposed to selling the townhomes?
Middleburg as a company, we are not a for sale developer. We are a fully integrated real estate development company. We develop, construct, and operate our own projects. So we will be the sole owner and operator of it.
And who will manage the rental home, townhomes?
It will all be under one, it will be Middleburg Property Management.
Are they affiliated with
Yes.
Middleburg, just no division?
Middleburg Communities is the parent company.
Okay, I have no more questions at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Maybe you can answer this question. What are the price points going to be as far as rent? What are we looking at? Just give me a basic range for townhomes versus single family.
Rents obviously do fluctuate, but right now the average rent will be slightly north of $2,000.
Okay. For a townhome or home?
Bulk rate, that's just across all unit types.
That's the average rent amongst.
Yeah, and they'll vary, obviously.
Homes will be higher, townhomes will be a little bit less?
Depending on the size and the number of bedrooms.
You mentioned that you guys will be managing it, so are you taking care of all lawn care?
Correct.
Throughout the entire neighborhood?
Correct.
So on the single families and the townhomes?
Yeah, everything, every blade of grass outside the public right-of-way, that's obviously going to be dedicated over to the town of Huntersville for maintenance, but everything else is going to be on us to keep and maintain.
And your maintenance group will manage the CCRs and enforce that? Correct. All right, what happens if you go bankrupt? If you guys go bankrupt, I got 264 for-rent residential development. What was the contingency on that? Is it a transition to start selling those individually? Is that a possibility?
So we have partners in the deal. I can't speak to the exact mechanism or tools that would kick into place if that were to happen. I will tell you from a zoning standpoint, subdividing these and selling them off would be very difficult, if not impossible.
Any other questions, Commissioner Kovacs?
Where is your closest property that you have like this near us?
So the furthest along property we have of the Hamlet prototype is in Huntsville, Alabama, and we are still going vertical with construction. But we have 19 projects under contract within permitting, various stages, obviously, totaling over 4,000 units of the Hamlet type, and 3 active construction projects.
The closest of which is in Wake Forest.
I think, I guess my next ones are for staff.
Okay. Ms. Sloop, I know this line of questioning, I just want to confirm that we are within bounds, or are we out of bounds with this particular line of questioning in regards to the financial?
I'll just follow up. So the decision by this board has to be based on whether or not the standards of the ordinance are met. And if the standards of the ordinance do not contain any language about the price of the units, then that's not something that this town board should be basing its decision on.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going off the rails. Commissioner Boone?
Yes, ma'am. I wasn't going to ask this question, but a couple of commissioners have brought it up. You also have a project in Jacksonville, Florida that's moving along, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Florida is part of the Wildlife Master Development.
That's right, wildlife hazard. How's that doing? How's the project doing?
The project should start site work within the next week or so.
All righty. And Millingburg, have you guys sold any property in the last 24 months?
Have we sold any properties?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I believe we have,
Do you know how many properties?
I do not know that.
Maybe 2? Okay. I have further questions for the staff, and then I have a follow-up question for the applicant.
Again, I just want to confirm with Ms. Sloop that Commissioner Boone's question, was that within scope or out of scope?
So about similar projects?
Correct.
That's within scope, just to receive generalized information about another project that's similar.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to make sure we stay within our guardrails. Any additional questions for staff at this time? I see several hands going up. Commissioner Kidwell.
Thank you. Mr. Pete, if you go back to the TIA and the turn lanes in and out of this, why is there not a traffic signal here? We got a neighborhood right down the street, we got a neighborhood across the street, we got a school right down the street. Why didn't the TIA?
Mr. Trott handled the TIA review. I'll let him.
Mr. Trott, what you got? Because I don't want this to come back, just like the Hamptons did over there off of 21 in a few years, and say we now can't get in and out of our place because the traffic on the school, traffic in the neighborhood, traffic here, and we've got to spend up to $350 of today's dollars. So I'll say, the neighborhoods, let's go $1 million of that times dollars for a traffic signal.
So the TIA was done in compliance with the current town ordinance, which is Article 14. The TIA did not recommend a traffic signal at either location. The state has also reviewed the traffic impact analysis that was done, although I don't think they required one, and they also did not require a traffic signal as part of the review.
Did the state and the TIA also say we didn't need a traffic signal at the Hamptons in 21? Originally?
I'm not sure that a TIA was done for that development or not.
I'm talking about the one across the street from them.
The professional.
Professional.
For the commercial, I don't recall if one was included or not in that. I don't recall that one was required as part of the improvements for that development.
I don't believe so. Any other questions for Mr. Trott while he is up here?
Well, yeah. The TIA was done, I know, only because you guys mentioned the plan has changed and increased significantly. The TIA was done before change or post change?
Okay. Yeah, and as the units count unit count changed. We asked for updated trip generation to make sure that it was not above the numbers that were included in the TIA that was provided.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Pete at this time? Commissioner Kovacs?
Sorry. I don't know, and maybe this is I don't know who is going to answer this, but I'm going to send it to you. Just because Commissioner Kidwell brought it up before about the town core. Sorry, town core.
Commissioner Boone did that.
Or Commissioner Boone did, sorry. And in the definition of town core, just curiosity, it says their design focuses on traditional neighborhood planning. This is considered traditional neighborhood planning, even though it's the first of its kind?
Well, again, what you've got is a design-based ordinance, form-based code. And what the ordinance is looking at is block lengths, pedestrian orientation, significant open space, units that create the public realm along the public streets, transportation options, bike lane, sidewalks, the vehicular. And so that would be the context that is being handled in. The type, I see, what you could draw that conclusion, but I think you could say, if you were speaking to a revolutionary new material that a home was built by, or maybe it was all brick or all stucco, that's not necessarily traditional, if you will. So using the vernacular of what Huntersville has traditionally been built on is not what that is saying in my read of it. But it's more about the setup, the pieces of the setup.
So the elephant in all of this, in the room, the connection to Plum Creek, we have no say, like, we cannot avoid having that connection? Because I heard the applicant say they're perfectly fine with it not going through, correct, I believe? So we have no leeway in that?
Well, I'm not going to say that that's the case. What I'm saying is that based on our policies and practices, based on our ordinance, and based on our general history that I'm familiar with, the public streets that have been stubbed from Plum Creek since its inception have been there ready to connect whenever development comes along. And so here is a development that is looking to provide a public street extension to a stub that does exist today. And we are recommending, based on all of our policies, practices, and all of our examples that we may have of where we have done that.
I'm confused that they're willing to, or they're being told they have to?
They have never been told they absolutely.
So it's a public street, so the public street's got to connect. That's what the code calls for. I think what you heard was, well, we're willing to put a chain up for fire access. We would not recommend it. The fire marshal would not recommend it.
One of my questions, actually, you led to the next question, was on one of the projects that you all, pre me being up here, one of those projects over here by Soil Supply and Hager's Road, they had very similar sentiments, and they wanted a gate to go there, and we did put one there, correct?
Did not.
We did not agree on it?
Correct. Okay. And that's an exact example of this. That did not get a gate. We would not recommend it here as well. I will also point out, so I apologize, I'm not going to be using the screen, but I'll go behind us. The design of this subdivision was changed such that the homes back in here have to come, and the street comes here. So if anybody is coming out of this subdivision and they want to go through Plum Creek, they actually have to go backwards to get there. So that was a design change through the process to try to make it more circuitous to go through Plum Creek. In addition to that, there are turn lanes. So as cars are leaving in the morning or at any point in time, there is a right turn lane and then a left turn lane, and then there's an entry lane on both this entrance and this entrance here. So there's stacking ability on that. So my point here is the subdivision design layout was done in such a way to discourage that. I will also point out, in this particular area right here, there's a parking court to serve all the homes, and this is the street connection into Plum Creek. The original, or one of the iterations of the plan had a parking lot connection right in here. And there was concern from the Plum Creek homeowners that if that parking lot was here, drains here, then there would be perhaps a desire to cut through. And so the developer cut that off, and so there is no longer a connection in here. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is that the design was intentional to try to minimize any kind of cut-through traffic. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Boone?
Yes, ma'am, I've got several, and it's either going to be this planning staff or the applicant, but I'd like to start with the town attorney. And before I start my questions, is everything in the staff report considered evidence?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Was a connection to the Lake Norman Charter School ever considered?
There is a stub too.
Was that ever considered making an entrance and exit out of this new development?
Actually tying in.
Right.
And that was not part of the review that we did with them. The major difference is that there is no public street system through the campus.
But so you really didn't even look at that as far as even talking to them to see if they wanted to tie in with this new development?
Other than the notifications that they received along with every other property owner within 250 feet, in the neighborhood meetings that were held within their own buildings, I can't speak to what they did or did not think about the proposal, but I have not heard any comments from them, yay or nay.
Okay.
But again, just to reiterate, the premise is connecting public street to public street, not within a parking lot.
So you're just saying that the Lake Norman Charter School doesn't have a public street to tie into?
Correct.
Thank you. You mentioned in your staff report that there will be a trail going to the Huntersville Athletic Park. Could you show me where that trail might be?
I can show you where they have, and again, they have just indicated the willingness. So
I think you made my point there. Their willingness, they really don't have to do that.
the trail connection over to the west, that's correct.
They don't have to do that. So they're just saying that to be, saying they say, hey, we might do this, we might not, but they do not have to do that.
Well, if it makes it onto the plan, and then it goes to the construction stage, and it's shown as noted, then there will be a level of commitment.
Okay. Reading the 2040 plan, EOS 10.1, it says that connections to all parks, schools, neighborhood, and major shopping centers should be connected. And if you put a stub between the Lake Norman Charter School and the Hamlet, will there be any pedestrian connectivity there?
The sidewalks for this particular stub street that is shown right here, right there.
Yep.
They would dead end at almost the edge of the property, and those sidewalks could continue forward. They could become trails instead of sidewalks. And then I believe, I'm not going to speak for the applicant, but I believe that they would be willing to extend that connection note to the west for a trail to the north as well. So the anticipation would be that these residents, if they were attending Lake Norman, could possibly go through there.
Save them from walking up to 115 and over.
Correct.
Okay. And to go along with your questioning, the current, are there any other rental development projects in our core area in Huntersville, or any in the pipeline coming up?
Well, when you say rental, obviously we have apartments.
If
you're talking about single family,
okay,
this would be the first that I'm aware of. We have condo developments that, of course, they have ownership of the interior walls. And there are some townhomes. We do, again, I don't know if you want me to list some of the apartments that are on the way, but we do have rental on the horizon. But this would be the first of single-family rental that I'm aware of, other than the provision of anyone who has a single-family home can rent on an annual basis in any neighborhood.
Okay, well, this comes down to my three last points I'm trying to make, and I want to go back to the neighborhood meeting, the first one and the second one, and reading the staff report. Could you tell me who wrote those minutes up, then put them in the staff report? Who's the author of those? The applicant wrote the minutes up for the neighborhood meeting. If you read the minutes from both meetings, the first paragraph is taken up, and each one of these individuals is mentioned along with their job description. Your name is even mentioned in there. But there's 40 or 50 neighborhood people that are there, and their names weren't listed. And I don't want to quote here, but it was 40 or 50 people who were neighborhood interest. Why wasn't there a sign-in sheet at either one of these meetings? It's not in the applicant. It's not in my agenda packet. So has anybody else seen any names of the neighborhoods who showed up? Well, with that said, I think we come down to those minutes where the applicant really doesn't want to stub into or cut through into Plum Creek. Plum Creek folks says they don't want the traffic either. It's the town that says you're going to have it because of the ordinance and because of first responders. But if you look at some of the residents who live in Plum Creek, one is a Huntersville sergeant in the police force, and the chief of the fire department lives there, and he doesn't seem to be too concerned about having access to it. So I guess that we've got to make, I'm feeling that this is going to probably pass, but I would, whoever makes a motion, I would like them to consider leaving this stub in. And I know Mr. Semino is going to come up here now and talk to me about connectivity.
By the way, I do have the sign-in sheets. They should have been attached if they were not.
David, I can just go.
They were in the PDF file, so I can certainly disseminate them, but we do have them.
Well, it's just, this is important to a lot of people. And when you have all the other people that are sitting on that wall, their names and their titles, and the neighbors are kind of like left out, it just, not a bad feeling. Uh-oh, here comes a big gun.
Mr. Semino.
I feel like I was invited to come up.
I think you were.
So here I am. So it is not unusual when a new subdivision comes in that a developer who's doing adjoining property doesn't want to connect and the neighbors don't want to connect. I will tell you that is bad policy. These streets have been stubbed since Plum Creek was originally approved. If we go back to the Plum Creek design, they had multiple stubs. But because of land acquired by other folks, utility easements, etc., there can be no other connections. So this is the lone connection that could happen. It does provide two ways in and out of Plum Creek, which is over 170 homes. And the fire marshal would like two connections when you exceed 100 homes. So if you go down the path of not making this connection, I will tell you, you are altering the trajectory of this town from now forward in a way that does not have, in a way that is not inconsistent with the policies that we've adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Semino.
Yeah, I would like to argue 2 points there, and I hate to, well, I'm just going to say that we've used this word town core earlier in the meeting starting in 1995, and we've used it in this presentation here at core also. I believe Plum Creek was planned or approved in 1994, so they might be grandfathered in there. And you say alter the transportation of the town going forward. Well, in the late 1990s, a stub was put in the Sherwood Forest for the connectivity into Shepherd's Vineyard, Kennedys Road, and I believe Oak Hill Road. That stub is still there 35 years later, and it's, as far as the stub should have been removed, now it can't because there's been a mother-in-law suite built there, so I'm just not feeling it.
Are there any other questions for staff at this point? Commissioner Kidwell?
One more.
One more.
Mr. Pete, through all this talk, the one thing that we haven't talked about is the impact on our schools. This is going to be, this development of 265 units is only going to add 140, potentially add 140 students to our already overcrowded schools. Takes Blythe up to 105%, J.M. Alexander at 98%, North Meck at 113%. This does not take into account the other developments in the area that may or may not be approved coming down the docket, does it? It only just looks at this particular one.
Well, the CMS produces these reports based on their criteria.
Yeah.
So what they are looking at, I would have to imagine they're looking at what is approved,
Presented.
vested, and then that's their background. But what might be coming, that I couldn't say.
You and I are both in the dark on what CMS does as far as approving.
What I'm hearing is that none of us are experts in regards to CMS at this point, in regard to these numbers. I think the one person that we have not heard from is the person that is a non-party, Mr. Solomon. Now, we'll keep in mind that Mr. Solomon is not an expert. However, he is coming to speak on behalf of the HOA.
I did spend 5 years as vice chair of the planning board for the town of Southold in New York. So I do have a planning background, as well as being the HOA treasurer and board of director.
But are you certified in planning?
No, I am not.
Thank you.
I would first like to tell the board that our community is not opposed to this development. We think it's a needed development. It fits with the 2040 plan. Our opposition solely is the stub road. I beg to differ with Mr. Semino's. Because it's there, it should be built. I've seen over the years many developments that have built things that should have never been built. But you're talking about the density of 4.69, I believe, of the neighboring development. That's almost 50% larger than the density of Plum Creek. Excuse me. It's not the traffic that our neighborhood is concerned with. Our concern is the transient population that will be living in this neighborhood. 1- and 2-year leases, turnovers. Our community was built in 1999. We lived very quietly and comfortably with no disruption of our community. By opening that road up into our community, it will allow thousands of people to come into our community that were never able to come before. People that drive into our community come into our community because either they live there, they have work being done by them, or there's deliveries being made. That's the extent of the traffic, and it's a very quiet development. One of the planning board members, I think, hit it right on the nose. He said, why are we making them open the road when neither of them want it? And that, to me, hits it right on the nose. We've had a comfortable 20-plus years living there with no incidents, no major incidents, where the need for a fire truck to have double access in and out of our community. If anything, it's been a wonderful design and a quiet community which has very little problems with it. As Commissioner Boone said, The fire chief and a Huntersville policeman both live there, and I believe their signatures are on the petition that we sent to the town board. 125 members of our community signed that petition, asking you to consider the fact that we would like to keep the quiet of our community, along with have a nice neighbor next door, okay? If you expose the road, again, changing that, the lives of 174 residents in Plum Creek if you open that road.
So, Mr. Solomon, I have to stop you there because I think what you're basing your comments on are opinion, and you're not an expert in transportation. And while it pains me to have to interrupt you and do this, my understanding of quasi-judicial is when you make a statement around transportation and movement of thousands of vehicles, et cetera, you're not an expert in that, and that cannot be considered.
How many people will be living in that community? If you had 2 people in each, that doesn't take an expert to know that there's going to be over 500 people in that community.
Right.
And again, I'm not going to attest to how many cars may be in there, but just the people alone are going to be minimally about 500 people, plus kids, living in that community. So when I say thousands of people will have access to my community, that's a true statement. It's not a transportation statement. That's a true statement. When that road opens, those people will be able to walk through and come into our development. If there's no road there, those people will stay on their own property and have their own enjoyment and peace. We have no idea what kind of security that the developer is planning, whether there's going to be people riding around in cars, checking for parking lots and robberies in cars or whatever it might be. We have no idea what kind of security will be there. But you're taking a density, like I said, that's almost 50% larger than our community and opening it up to our community. And that's our concern. Our concern is that we don't want it. And just because the street is there doesn't mean that you have to open it.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon.
You're quite welcome.
Now, let me look here. Are there any other questions for the applicant or for staff at this time? All right. Parties withstanding have an opportunity to offer rebuttal or closing argument. As a reminder, please focus your response on legal arguments and new or clarifying evidence. Please avoid mere repetition of the evidence we have already heard. We will begin with the applicant. Is there anything else that you, as the applicant, would like to address regarding what we've heard this evening? And address it to the board, please.
Yeah, just on the security, just because it was recently brought up, we do typically offer discounted rent to a local sheriff or police officer that serves a courtesy officer role at our communities. But outside of that, I think everything has been discussed. We've been clear with what we're willing to do as it relates to various design principles around the site. And I think David covered a lot of the pertinent items with the design itself. Unless, Jason, you have something to?
No, I think, the only evidence that's been presented, I think that's competent evidence, shows that we have complied with the requirements and are therefore entitled to approval.
Thank you. Does the board have any more questions for the parties or witnesses? Well, we didn't have witnesses. Parties before we move into deliberation. Commissioner Partee?
Yes, to the applicant, do you have plans to build any affordable housing within this community?
We do have an affordable arm that looks for opportunities to do that. There is no affordable housing in this development, but we are active in the area and look for opportunities where they are available.
Any other questions at this time before you deliberate? Hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the board will now begin deliberation. The evidentiary hearing remains open so that the board may ask clarifying questions if needed. As a reminder, this board is tasked with deciding if, based on competent material, substantial evidence presented at the hearing before this board, this proposal meets the applicable standards. If the applicant meets the burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence that the standards of the ordinance will be met, the burden shifts to the other parties opposing the application to show by competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will not be met. If conflicting evidence as to a standard is presented, the board will weigh the evidence and determine which side's evidence is more credible and more reliable. If the applicant does not meet their burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence, that the standards of the ordinance will be met, the board must deny the application. The application as originally submitted was considered by the planning board, and the planning board made a recommendation. Nothing that occurred at the planning board level, including the planning board's recommendation, is considered evidence that you can base your decision on. However, the planning board's recommendation may be useful to the board in identifying issues that this board may want to consider and evaluate based upon the evidence that was presented at the hearing before this board. So, is there a motion regarding this request first?
I'll take a stab at one.
All right.
Please listen and help me out, you guys. I'd like to make a motion to approve Hamlet of Huntersville subdivision sketch plan, a request by Middleburg Communities LLC to subdivide 43.91 acres located along Old Statesville Road immediately north of Plum Creek subdivision at 12349 Old Statesville Road, parcel number 017-361-02, and portion of 017-36104 for a 265-unit for-rent residential development. The application is complete, complies with all applicable requirements based on the satisfaction of staff comments in Part 5 of the staff report, all of which must be addressed by the applicant, and is supported by the findings of facts outlined in Parts 2 through 4, with the exception of Part 7 in Section 4 of the staff report. That's in the new one here. Which are incorporated herein with the condition of removing connection into Plum Creek, as it is not in the best interest or safety of the Plum Creek community.
Second.
I have a motion. I believe Commissioner Kovacs was a second. We will now open it up for discussion. Any additional discussion, Commissioner Phillips?
Emily, if I'm out of line, please tell me so. Like number 7 in this new thing we got, discourage through traffic. You can try to discourage through traffic all day, but we cannot.
So
it's speculative.
So what I would call your attention to is actually page 6 out of 10, number 3, access between adjoining properties. I don't know if it's the same page in the new one, but there's a quote there from section 6.100.3, and it says, all streets shall, not should, shall connect to create a comprehensive transportation network which allows free movement of automobiles, bicyclists, and pedestrians. That's where this requirement is coming from. It's a shall, not a should.
Any additional conversation?
But if we have on the books another situation where there's not a connection, how's that fair?
So in terms of changing this section, it would require a text amendment. And so we need to be following our own ordinance.
I would say to this board that when these issues have come up, as I've sat on the board and sat where you do currently, it's always been a hard decision to make, but we follow the ordinance. And I would like to also remind the board, you know, there are example after example within this community that when we have made connections, it has been in the best interest. And I can give an example of Winfield. When Winfield Creek did not, they only had one entrance in and out. When the town came in, created that second entrance, created the roundabouts, and that community could not imagine not having that back entrance any longer. That in and of itself, folks, this is a conversation for the board at this time. So please let the board do the business of the town. I would greatly appreciate it. I understand that you are very heated and you've got, you're very passionate about your community. I certainly understand that. But please let the board have some conversation around this so that they can make a decision. Any additional conversation that the board would like to have? Commissioner Boone?
Yes, thank you. Your statement of the town doing other cut-throughs and opening up. I'd just like to remind everybody about Dave Kennedy Farm, that we postponed that until we saw the improvements to Highway 73. And I go back to Sherwood Forest and Shepherd's Vineyard. There was supposed to be a connectivity there 30-some years ago, and there's still a stub. So going from following the ordinance is not 100% in the town of Huntersville. And I'm still kind of confused of your motion. Is your motion to keep the?
Keep the stub.
Okay, that's what I thought you said.
Did you
Connect, thank
that or no? Agreement connection.
No, because it was on the plan.
Oh, it was. I thought it wasn't.
Black and
Commissioner
white,
Kovacs.
Can her motion stand as is?
Again, the requirements of the ordinance say shall connect. They do not say should. Should would be permissive.
So there is a motion on the floor, and there, I'm sorry.
Motion again, please.
Yes.
Sweet Jesus, it's all scribble. The application is complete, complies with all applicable requirements based on the satisfaction of staff comments in Part 5 of the staff report, all of which must be addressed by the applicant and is supported by the findings of facts outlined in Part 2 through 4 with the exception of Part 7 of 4 of the staff report, which are incorporated herein with the condition of removing connection into Plum Creek as it is not in the best interest or safety of the Plum Creek community.
So there is a motion. Is there still a second for this? Yes. So we will go ahead and then do a vote. All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? 3-2. That motion does pass. Staff will draft, and I will sign a final written decision to reflect the vote and reasoning for this decision. Thank you to everyone attending the hearing regarding the Hamlet. We welcome you to stay for the other items on the agenda. If you are leaving, please do so quietly at this time. Board, let's take a 10-minute recess, please. We will be back at 8:42. The Huntersville Town Board will come back to order. We will be moving on to item 10D. It's a quasi-judicial hearing regarding considering a decision on Vallejo subdivision. Mr. Semino?
Mayor, we received an email from Mr. Robert Bowman this morning that indicated I'm requesting Vallejo Village subdivision vote be continued until September 19th town board meeting.
Okay. Folks, please. So the request from the petitioner, from the applicant, is to defer
That is correct.
until September 19th. 9/19. Is there a motion on the floor?
I have a question.
Yes.
Because the applicant has requested a deferral on this, do we have to grant that?
Do we have to, Ms. Sloop?
No, you don't.
Can we move forward without the applicant being here?
It would be very difficult because you need his information to make your decision on.
And he's not here tonight?
That's correct.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to continue the subdivision hearing to September 19th, 2022, at 6 p.m. at Huntersville Town Hall located at 101 Huntersville Town.
If there's a motion to defer to September 19th, I'm sorry, Commissioner Boone, if you wouldn't mind, please restate and speak
Yes,
into the
thank you.
microphone.
You think I'd learn how to do this by now, but I'd like to make a motion to continue the Vallejo subdivision hearing to September 19th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at the Huntersville Town Hall located at 101 Huntersville Concord Road.
September. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
I have a point.
Oh, Ms. Cosner, yes.
For the attorney? Is there a limit to how long somebody can postpone these things?
No, for the quasi-judicial hearings, the statute does allow them to be continued. There's no limit specifically set forth, but I would suggest that if we continue it, that we eventually re-advertise.
Okay.
Can we amend your motion to re-advertise, Dan?
If you would like to re-advertise it, you can include that in the motion.
Then I'll amend my motion to re-advertise the September 19th, 2022 quasi-judicial hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Discussion, I got to.
Oh, discussion.
Right. I mean, I came here last month ready to vote on this. I came here tonight ready to vote on this, and it seems like everybody's ready to move forward but the applicant, and I'm going to vote on this on the 19th of September.
Commissioner Kidwell?
I think the applicant doesn't want to vote on it because he's emailed people. It's called us Hootersville politics. He knew that three of us be recusing. He's hearing that from the former mayor, who seems to have a pipeline of information coming from this board. So I think he's just going to keep on deferring until he gets his way. My 2 cents.
Any additional conversation around this topic? We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? 3-2, motion passes. We will take this back up September the 19th and making sure that it is re-advertised. Moving on to item 10E. This is a petition TA 22-05. Consider a decision, a request by the town board to amend the subdivision and zoning ordinance. Mr. Semino. Folks, as you leave, thank you for coming this evening. I know that you were expecting some more conversation and dialogue this evening, but please come back on September the 19th. Thank you. I'm sorry this isn't the place. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Semino.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll enter the staff report into the record. Again, this is to amend the zoning and subdivision ordinance to change major subdivisions from a quasi-judicial process to a staff approval administrative process, as well as miscellaneous cleanup adjustments. As a reminder, in Huntersville, we have 3 steps for subdivisions: a sketch plan, which is the first one. That's the quasi-judicial standard. And then if that is approved by the town board, then we go on to preliminary plats, which is a staff approval. That's full engineering drawings. And then once the infrastructure is installed per that plat, then they prepare the final plat, which staff approves, and that is meets and bounds descriptions of the lots to be sold. So that's the process. So again, the current process, because our ordinance has some subjective standards, we have to follow the quasi-judicial process. So there's a sketch plan application. We require a neighborhood meeting. The planning board makes a recommendation, and then the town board holds a quasi-judicial decision meeting, which is similar to what we had at the Hamlet. The proposed ordinance that you have before you that's been through 2 public hearings and has been endorsed by the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board, a split vote, is that we change all of our standards that are now subjective and make them objective standards. And we still have the sketch plan application. We still would recommend in the ordinance a neighborhood meeting that at least informs people what's happening around them. It would not go to the planning board, and as we have prepared the proposed amendment, it would be a staff decision. That is consistent with the North Carolina School of Government that recommends staff approval, since there is no room for policy choices or discretion. The town board could assign that administrative decision to a planning board or a town board. We recommend it be the staff per the School of Government. So without going into details, you received the entire changes to the subdivision ordinance and also miscellaneous changes to the zoning ordinance. And again, we have ordinance today that has general requirements, and we have things that are subjective in nature, such as this language that number 2 you see up there, conformity, where today it says all subdivisions shall be planned to facilitate the most advantageous development. Because that is so subjective, we're just saying you should do it. So it's no longer would be a requirement, just something you should do. If you look on the second column on the right, those are general requirements. Those are things that you shall do. So these are things that you have to do. I will reiterate, as I did during the 2 public hearings, the town board still will maintain, even if we do an administrative staff approval, if a developer wants to modify their traffic impact requirements, they would have to come to the town board. That would not be a staff approval. Also, if they want to get some relief from some subdivision standards through a variance, or they want to appeal a decision or seek an interpretation from the subdivision ordinance, that too has to come to the town board with this text amendment. Having said that, we also understand that there's been a tremendous amount of discussion on this text amendment. So what we wanted to do is just clarify that there were a number of sections of the ordinance we were doing was cleanup work, which is make sure we have the right citations in there. And so in this text amendment, we had an attachment 8 that says these changes that are highlighted here, these are sections that are not subject to the quasi-judicial process. This is just the cleanup work. And from a staff standpoint, if the town does not go with a change on the quasi-judicial, we would recommend at least doing this cleanup work changes that is in these sections here. Having said that, the staff did recommend approval, and it's in your staff report. We did recommend approval. We had indicated that this change to go to all objective standards is consistent with LU1, LU2, LU3, and 4 of the Huntersville 2040 plan. It's consistent with the and reasonable in the public interest to amend it because the town board has determined subdivision plans be considered under administrative process. So we were comfortable with that. However, the planning board did not recommend the quasi-judicial change. So what they recommended was, they recommended approval in considering the proposed amendment TA 2205. The planning board recommends approval of TA 2205 for the cleanup language amendments listed in attachment 8 that I just kind of showed you to the zoning and subdivision ordinance, and disapprove changing the subdivision approval process from quasi-judicial administrative, as that is not in keeping with policy 11, LU 11 of the Huntersville 2040 plan. That's the section that talks about trying to protect neighborhoods. So the planning board felt like, at least with the quasi-judicial process, there's a little bit of opportunity to modify, if you will, a development standard to benefit the adjoining property. I will give you an example we just did tonight. All right, so the Hamlet. The ordinance requires a 20-foot setback between all subdivisions. Staff and the homeowners have indicated through the neighborhood meeting they were concerned that that might not be enough, so the developer ended up putting a 50-foot buffer up and a solid fence. And so that was kind of an evolution, if you will, of the plan, using that section about facilitate the most advantageous development of the adjoining property. So the planning board felt like, at least with the quasi-judicial process, there is an opportunity to take in the neighbor concerns. So again, they recommended just attachment 8 with all the minor cleanup work be adopted. And having said that, I realize this is a very, very complex and contentious issue. So at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Chair will open it up for conversation and discussion. Commissioner Partee, do you have any questions for staff at this time? No. Commissioner Phillips? Commissioner Kidwell? Negative. Commissioner Kovacs? Commissioner Boone?
Not at this time.
All right, seeing no discussion, is there a motion on the floor? Commissioner Partee?
Commissioner Munger is not here, and he served on the Ordinance Advisory Board, which he's also in previous minutes articulated his opinion on this particular matter, subject. And I believe we should defer this until the next meeting, until he's back, so he can also collaborate with us in making a decision.
Is that a motion?
I make a motion on that, yes.
You are making a motion to defer
To defer
until?
our next meeting, next adjoining meeting, where Commissioner Munger can be here present.
Just a moment. That is, okay, thank you. Motion to defer to August 1st.
And we need to state the time and location.
Yes, at what time?
6 o'clock here at Town Hall.
6 p.m. at Town Hall. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Kovacs? Sorry.
Kid Kovacs.
The two kakas.
I am, while I do like when we are all together to be able to make such an important decision, perfect timing that we did have the minutes from the meeting where this was discussed. And I'm comfortable making a motion because I was able to read the minutes and see where at least Commissioner Munger was at one point. I haven't spoken to him to hear any different. But I think we, as Mr. Simoneau said, this has come up so many different times that after tonight's quasi-judicials and all of that, I think this is something we need to hurry up and just kind of finally make our decision on because it's been going on for so long. So I'm not in support of waiting.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. I'm sorry, Commissioner Boone?
I'd like to reply to the commissioner's comment about the minutes. If you attended the planning board or watched it on television or Zoom, you'll know that the volume did not work during that meeting. And the minutes that we've got in our agenda packet were written by each individual, if they remembered it correctly. So I don't have a whole lot of confidence in the minutes that are in our agenda packet.
Ours, from our meeting.
I'm talking about the planning board meeting, when they were talking about this.
fun about that. When I was referring to, we have minutes, I was referring to, we said we want to change this because Commissioner Munger's not here and we don't know how he feels, but it's actually an 8A. The last time we discussed it, he's in these minutes from our meeting.
Right, but there's also a set of minutes that have come from the planning board that was also discussed, and they voted on it. Mr. Semino made reference to it on the screen here, that those minutes were not verbatim because there was no sound during the planning board meeting.
I know, and I get that, but that's not going to change by waiting. Are we getting new minutes, or? I just don't.
Commissioner Partee.
It's Commissioner Munger was elected, as we were, to represent the town of Huntersville. And we owe him the courtesy, we owe him the professionalism to allow him to be here when we vote on a particular important agenda, a policy and process such as the quasi-judicial. And he has been involved with the ordinance board, which he sits on as commissioner. So therefore, there is no rush. It's just 2 weeks from now. And we do owe him that. And if you were away, we would do the same thing for any other commissioner here, to have them the opportunity to respond. So, and we did it for our other commissioners.
We did have Commissioner Kidwell when he was out once, that we deferred.
That was the birth of a child, and he was the one who had his name on the agenda for the item, so that's a lot different. And then you got on me for doing that.
If I may, since my name was brought up, one of the very first meetings I was unable to attend, I had asked I had asked on the agenda changes that the consent agenda items be moved up to regular business for discussion, and this board, Mr. Boone, you did not vote for it, voted to put them back on the consent agenda. So decisions have been made with members up here not being here before. And as terms, as far as the birth of my child, I did ask if I could zoom in, and I don't remember, it wasn't staff, but it was, and not to throw you under the bus, Madam Mayor, but I think you said I couldn't zoom in because it wasn't an emergency type situation at that point. But I do recall that because I thought it was very odd when Commissioner Munger was able to zoom in on his, or Zoom or call in on his vacation. So in this case, though, Mr. Partee, I do understand your point. What did I say? I thought I said Commissioner. I'm sorry. Commissioner Partee. I do understand your point by waiting for Commissioner Munger, even though in the minutes he says he would be, did you even say your motion? No. No. Well, it would go along with Commissioner Kovacs's motion. I think it's, I'd like to give Commissioner Munger the opportunity to be here for this.
All right, so there is a motion to defer to August the 1st at 6 p.m. here at Town Hall. There is a second. All those in favor? Those opposed? Did I say 6? I said 1st. August 1st at 6 p.m. I'm sorry, it probably slurred. It's getting late. August 1st at 6 p.m. All right, we'll now move to item 10F. Ms. Master Officiant, I know I'm not even going to get it right tonight.
Slurring, it's all right.
Just Laura, thank you so much for being here this evening. Traffic calming measures on Greenway Drive.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. So I'm here tonight to ask the board.
Just a moment.
Madam Mayor, I need
Yes.
to recuse Commissioner Kovacs from this discussion, as she is part of the group asking for said speed bumps.
Yes, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion, there is a second. All those in favor of asking Commissioner Kovacs to recuse? Any opposed? Seeing none. Commissioner Kovacs, don't go far. Thank you. All right, now,
So I'm here tonight to ask the board for a decision on the traffic calming measures for the Greenway Drive project. So first, I want to address what Commissioner Boone had asked me last month when we discussed this, if I had spoke to Chief DeToli. So I did have a conversation with him. On this screen, you can see Fire Station number 1. What Chief DeToli told me is that when they get a call, if you look at the blue arrows, they exit forward to 115 to go north or south. When they return, they either back in the same way where the blue arrows are, or if you follow my red arrows, they'll come down Greenway Drive and then they'll turn up their private driveway. If you look a little bit further to the left, that is the location of one of the proposed alternates for a speed hump. So when I explained this to Chief DeHoley, he said he had no issues with it. And so I'm just going to continue with the 2 options I came up with. Thank you. So to remind you, alternate 1 has 2 speed humps. They are located between Dallas and Watkins on Greenway Drive. They are roughly 450 feet apart. Today during the public comments, one gentleman had said that he thought it was too far away from the park. So if I can address that. The park is in a low point, and he was saying that you speed up as you're going downhill, which I agree. But that's the low point. If you were then to turn, if you're coming down Dallas, you see the pink dot, that is an existing speed hump. So you would go over that speed hump going down the hill to slow down. Now you'll get to the intersection there. It's an awkward intersection. Dallas, Greenway, Watkins intersection. You'd slow down to make a turn. Now, if you're continuing on Greenway, you're actually going uphill. So your speed would not increase to go downhill. If the board would like, I can certainly shift that speed hump, not too much because we don't want to get too close to the intersection. Again, we want to be wise of driveways. We spoke about that last time. So this one's alternate 1, 2 speed humps, only between Dallas and Watkins. Alternate 2 has the 3 speed humps, still the 2 that we were just speaking of, and then 1 a little bit to the east of Watkins, but not at the fire station driveway. That would slow down people who are coming westbound on Greenway, which starts the downhill. Not as steep as further down, but they would go over that speed hump. Then you'd get to that intersection of Watkins, which you would slow down if you were to make the turn or continue your way to the next speed hump. So staff does recommend this alternative, alternate 2 with the 3 speed humps. So I'm asking the board today to approve this option or any discussions you might have.
which option are you recommending?
This one right here, alternate 2.
Alternate 2.
3 speed humps.
All right. Is there a motion on the floor?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to make a motion to approve alternate 2 traffic calming measures on Greenway Drive.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and multiple seconds. All those, any discussion before we move forward on a vote? Commissioner Boone? No. Okay, so there is a motion, there is a second. All those in favor of alternate 2? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes 4-0. Is there a motion to bring Commissioner Kovacs back?
No.
Motion to bring, yeah.
There's a motion to bring Commissioner Kovacs back. There is a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Of course. All right. If we can get Commissioner Kovacs, thank you so very much.
Voted against you, sorry.
We're now moving to item 10G. Ms. Strickland, this is one I'm very excited about. We're getting to the fun stuff at the end of the evening, the 150th anniversary logo.
So our 150th anniversary committee asked the Public Relations Subcommittee to come up with a logo for the year-long celebration. What we decided to do was to go out to the community and ask the community to tell us what they thought 150th would look like for a logo. So one of our submissions was from an art teacher, Lake Norman Charter, And it came in with actually more than these 5 choices. And we narrowed it down to one that we thought could be used in various ways. And the subcommittee took it back to the full committee. And the full committee picked, I would say probably the best way, picked number 1, for lack of a better way, picked that design. What you have in front of you are 5 different ways the same logo can look, depending on how we use it, depending on if we have a full color ad and we want to add color to it, or if we just need to keep it a simple single color. So what we have is what was created and submitted and chosen by the PR committee, taken to the full committee, and approved by the full committee. The bylaws of that anniversary committee state that the logo will be approved by the town board. So that's why it is before you tonight.
So just to be clear, if adopted, all 5 options would be utilized throughout the.
They could be.
They could be utilized.
These are all different. Obviously, as you increase in color numbers, it increases in cost.
Correct.
So these were just how it could be
Utilized.
Yes, depending. One of the other submissions, I know I mentioned it in an email to the board, one of the other submissions that we received, the committee felt like it would be best used as possibly a mural during the celebration. And so we would work with that local resident, because there is money in our budget, well, Michael's budget, for a mural for the year celebration, and we would try to incorporate that with some edits moving forward.
So let's open this up for conversation. Commissioner Kovacs?
Only because I feel insane. 1 and 2, what's the difference?
That's a great question. It is minute. There are some differences in fonts and weights of letters and things. And again, when we get to using it, once it's actually approved, we may ask for additional tweaks to make it more usable. But there are font sizes,
I'll trust you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll trust you, but also, sorry.
Go ahead.
Are we able, you're probably about to ask this, sorry if I take it. Are we able to, like, we approve one, but ask to have something added, possibly the year?
Yes.
So people understand.
That question has already come up. We could go back and see how that would work in, whether it's an actual, just the date or the 150 years of date instead of celebrating. There are a couple of ways that we could try to incorporate that.
I have an idea. In the banner ribbons on each side of celebrating 150 years, on the left one, you extend them a bit. The left one, put our original date. On the next one, put the 150th anniversary.
We can work with the artiste on all types of tweaks. As long as we're heading in the right direction for the board, we can go back and, just like the mural was a great presentation. We felt like it would be best as a mural and not a logo, so we would want to work with them to see how we could make it actually work.
So is there a motion? He's like, I can make a motion.
I wasn't planning on making a motion. I usually am pretty well buttoned up on this, but I'm going to make a motion that we accept the Town of Huntersville sesquicentennial celebration logo with the addition of the 1873 to 2023 dates in there someplace. Or is the artist in the crowd tonight? Or,
I have actually never met the artist in person.
well, you just do the best you can.
We know better. We communicate via email.
So there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any additional discussion?
So we're not picking like just one?
No.
It's the concept, it's the general. Moving forward, we have to make this usable in print and
So
stuff.
much work deciding which one I like.
I personally like the one with lots of colors, but that's expensive.
Mine were all in black and white. It was very difficult.
I'm not responsible for that.
All right, so there is a motion and there is a second. All those in favor of adopting this 150th logo? Thank you.
Good job, committee.
Thank you so much. I think we have one item left on the agenda, and this is to appoint to the Greenway Trails and Bike Commission. One member of the GTBC had to step down due to a job promotion and change in schedule. So we will be appointing a new member to carry out the term through 2023. Mr. Jaycox, you're not Miss Tracy. So,
Tonight. Yeah, we got 8 applications, 1 open, like you mentioned. It's an unexpired term that expires into 2023. And you had a map in front of you. It shows you the current members as well as the 8 new applicants.
very good. So as we normally do it, each person will give me one number, because I do not believe there are any names on this one. All right, so we will start with Commissioner Boone. What is your number?
My number is 4, but I'd just like to say I don't think we should be voting on things unless we have a name. I would never vote for president or the governor unless their name was on the application or the ballot. Number 4.
Commissioner Kovacs?
5.
5. Commissioner Kidwell?
5.
Commissioner Phillips?
5.
And Commissioner Partee? 6. 6. All right. Well, that would, 4, 5, and 6. So that looks like there's 3 votes for number 5. So. Who is it? So do you have a key?
It's me, but I'll let
So please let us know so that we, so that we can congratulate our new appointed member to the Greenway Commission. Thank you very much.
No, we have to make a motion.
Oh, we do need a motion. I'm so sorry.
I would like to make a motion to approve applicant number 5 to the Greenways Committee.
And there's a second. All those in favor? Any, none opposed? All right, so number 5 is it. Flip back to the agenda. All right, so we'll now move to mayor and commissioner reports. And I do not have a report this evening. Other than to say, I do have an MTC meeting scheduled for next week. So I will be down with Mr. Roberts, talking with Katz and the other members within the region. We will start to my right this evening, Commissioner Partee.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I do not have a report at this time. Been on vacation, but I just want to state that remember to give to Cool Kids Clubhouse, who in honor of Dan Jensen. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Phillips?
No updates at this time.
Ooh. Commissioner Kidwell?
CRTPO will be meeting this Wednesday down in Charlotte. I will be there in person, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kovacs? Of course.
No report.
Hey, my
she's
things
got a
are
report.
happening. So, Lake Norman Chamber report. Tomorrow, the Lake Norman Chamber is hosting a ribbon cutting at 9 a.m. at Auto Glass Experts, and it's followed by Lunch and Learn hosted by our Diversity Council on Culture Appreciation. That is taking place in the boardroom, but they've reached capacity, so you can attend online via Zoom. Thursday, July 21st from 9 to 10 is Business Works with the topic of a path forward, adjusting your retirement plan. That will be in the chamber boardroom with breakfast compliments of our speaker. I'm going to butcher your name. I'm so sorry, TJ Francomano. And you can join in person or Zoom. And this Friday is Focus Friday with Dr. Condi Deitmeyer, president of Central Piedmont Community College, who's discussing the state of CPCC and community colleges, and that's from 8:30 to 9:30. Huntersville Chamber. So please join us tomorrow, Tuesday, from 4:30 to 7:30 for the upcoming Huntersville Regional Chamber meeting hosted by Lake Norman Community Sailing and Kathy Miles. The event will include networking for all, and barbecue dinner will be provided, so be sure to bring your business cards, and it's open to all members and non-members. Also, the Jill Swain Memorial Fundraiser is accepting bids and donations from now through July 24th. Visit the online auction to place your bid or make a donation today, and the proceeds will go towards a memorial in Jill's memory. The board is currently working on updating our Facebook page with the latest news and events, so please just check back periodically to see when we've updated it. And the Huntersville Chamber would just like to thank everyone for their continued support, and they look forward to seeing everyone soon after this little hiatus. Now I'm done.
Okay. Commissioner Boone.
Very quick, I have an Electric Cities meeting this week. More details to follow. That's it.
Wonderful. All right. We'll go to closing comments. I just want to thank everyone who's hung out with us this evening. You've ridden the ride all the way to the end, so thank you all for being here, and just appreciate you. And for those who were here and just working through the political and local process, I think that's a wonderful thing when we see so many people coming into this room and advocating for one another. Board, are there any closing comments from board members this time? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor? None opposed. Good night, everyone.